of interest. Are there any declarations of a personal or prejudicial interest, please? Okay, well, we have a number of members indicating that they wish to express declarations of interest, but I'm going to bring the monitoring officer in for clarity, I'm sure, on one of the motions in relation to town and community councils. Over to you, please, Kelly.
That's right. Just to clarify for all members, no declarations have to be made today if you're a member of a town and community council in relation to the motion at agenda item 14. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. That is helping. Councillor Davis, you still have your hand up, and so did Councillor Winstanley. Councillor Paul Davis, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to explain to the Council why I'm not wearing a tie today, Chair, because I've had an operation to my neck and I'm unable to do the collar up at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. You're excused, and I hope you're recovering from your operation. Councillor Winstanley, please.
I need to make a declaration of interest on item 9, the budget outrun, as my employer is affected by some of the budget in that. Thank you. A personal declaration on this occasion.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Winstanley. And Councillor Evans, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I haven't got a declaration, but I'm just concerned that people that are online may not all have got their cameras on. So I just think that that might need to be addressed. Thank you.
Right, okay. Well, we will monitor that, and I will draw that to the attention of members if they are not keeping their cameras on, but please do keep your cameras on for the duration of the meeting. Okay, we will now move on to the approval of the minutes of the last meetings of council. So you have before you the minutes of the council meetings on the 2nd of April, the 9th of April and the 14th of May. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, that they're a true and accurate record of those meetings? Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. All in agreement?
Aye.
Oh, apologies. Democratic Services Officer has an amendment that you wish to propose.
Yes.
Rachel, please.
Thank you, Chair. There needs to be an amendment to the minute because having clarified now with the CJC, Councillor Simon Griffiths is unable to sit on the standards and the governance and audit. So we have clarified. And I believe, Leader, if I'm correct, that Councillor Graham Walter has put himself forward for one of them. So just to confirm, we'll amend that in the minute then from today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
That is correct,
Leader, did you want to come in?
Just to clarify, that is correct. Councillor Graham Walters has volunteered to take up that space.
Okay, so the minutes were accurate, but there's been a subsequent change. Is that correct? So the minutes were accurate, but there's been a subsequent change. Thank you. Okay, all agreed to the minutes. Presentation to council by representatives of Valleys to Coast. Our Chief Executive will now present a report and introduce the Chief Executive and colleagues from Valleys to Coast on a presentation covering the latest work of the organisation. Mark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief because members are accustomed now to these presentations from key partners, including from Valleys to Coast. I think this is probably your second or third time here. The presentation today will be led by Jo Oak, the Chief Executive of Valleys to Coast, and she'll be accompanied by other key officers. I just want to reinforce, Jo, that please keep the presentation to 20 minutes and then there'll be 20 minutes of questioning. Apparently, if you don't, something awful will happen, like the lectern will explode or the floor will open up below you. So if you can do that, we'd be very grateful. Thank you. Oh, have we? Oh, right. Yeah, perhaps introduce your colleagues as well.
Okay. Afternoon. Thank you for inviting. So I'll do some introductions and then, while we're getting the technology to work. So I'm Jo Oak. I'm the Chief Executive of Valleys to Coast, and I've been joined this afternoon by my senior exec team. So I have Hugh Lewis, who's our Executive Director of Finance and Corporate Services, Emma Howells, the Exec Director of our Communities and Customers, and in the back I've got James Griffiths, our MD of Regeneration and Development, and Paul Price, our Managing Director for Llanw, which is our repairs maintenance service. So what we'll be looking to present this afternoon, so I am conscious of time, I'm hoping we'll do it in less than 20 minutes so that there is an opportunity for us to have questions and to have a dialogue, is for us just to talk through what our priorities were and our performance delivery for the financial year of ending in 2025, and just to give you an overview of what we are looking to take forward as we move into the new financial year. So I'll just do some, it's not picking up in terms of, so apologies in terms of us doing, in terms of, I'll just talk through, it's going to be in light and we'll make sure the presentation is shared with everyone, and I'll just draw through some highlights for you. So during 24-25, our priorities we set out as an organisation was to ensure that we were delivering safe, warm and dry homes. We know, and I've made no mistake of letting Cabinet and Welsh Government know of the underinvestment that Bridgend, particularly Valleys to Coast, have not received as a result of lack of dowry. So we've had to think very differently and prioritise in terms of where our investment needed to go. We've had a laser focus on damp, mould and condensation. We've set up a task force during the year in terms of us being able to identify and working with our customers to tackle damp, mould and condensation, and is an area that we're continuing to drive improvements. We've had a laser focus around dish repair and improving our repairs services, because we know that's what's really important to our customers and our tenants is our repairs, and that's why we created Llanw 12 months ago with that going live. So over the last 4 years, we've really significantly increased our investment into our homes, and that's our major in work investments. That's not in regards to our responsive repairs. Last financial year was our record investment of over £5 million into homes, and they've primarily been focusing on roofs and external walls, because that fits in with the warm and dry, making sure that those homes are warm and dry. We will continue, that's going to still be a real focus in terms of us investing in our homes, but we are thinking differently, because with the money that we do have, how can we make sure that the money we're investing is being impactful? So we have been thinking quite differently about how we do our major in works investments. We've completed over the last financial year over 26,000 repairs. That's significantly increased in terms of what we've been doing around our repairs. And I'm really pleased to be able to report that our transactional, when Llanw have gone in to do repairs, our satisfaction rate is up to 90%. Before we had Llanw, that was down into the 50-60%. So in that 12-month period of us really having that laser focus, have significantly improved delivering the service of our responsive repairs. We do know, and our customers do tell us that, when Valleys to Coast and our Llanw colleagues are going in, they are trusted, they're much more satisfied. When we have our contractors, there is still work to be done, and we'll be working very closely with our subcontractors to improve that satisfaction rate. So we've brought on 71 new homes, and in addition to that, we've purchased 24 homes, and that's enabled us to home 256 families from the local authority waiting list. We've been actively working as well over the last 12 to 18 months in terms of reducing our complaints. Pleased to report that they've down from 174 to 104. That does change. We're receiving, and we welcome complaints, because complaints is a view of hearing the customer, and for us is about how do we take the themes and use that to drive service improvement. And we have invested in our colleagues. We have grown as an organisation from 263 colleagues to 307, and that's about putting more colleagues out in those frontline services so that we can improve our service delivery. And we got to recognise it plays an increase to the Bridgend economy. Over half of our colleagues live and are part of our communities in Bridgend. So we've made sure part of our focus is in terms of our big 5 compliance areas around safety and compliance. Really pleased in terms of asbestos and Legionella, we have 100% compliance. With gas, electric and fire risk, we're just under 100%, so we're tinkering around 98 to 99%. And primarily why we haven't got that 100% compliance is due to access issues, or there's issues with property condition when we go in there that we can't carry out the appropriate testing as a result. But we have been working very closely with our housing colleagues who are doing much more kind of wraparound support, because what we find out is actually there are probably more complex issues that are going on in people's lives, and it needs to be that much more wraparound support. But what we do make sure is we're assessing the safety of those individuals and families, and we don't cut off services, because we do know that there are other organisations who would be cutting off those services, and we don't take that step. We just want to work through those difficult problems. So what I will do now is just hand over to Emma, because I think what's important that we just want to share with you as well is our customer satisfaction. So there's a regulatory requirement that every 2 years we report into Welsh Government. What's called a STAR survey is how we do the satisfaction of our customers. So Emma.
Hello everyone, can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So our STAR survey is the survey that we do every 2 years. So we've had the recent results back. We're pleased to sort of say that in 8 areas we have seen an increase in satisfaction. In most of those 8 areas, it's areas where we've had specific service focus to make the improvements. So how we manage services that we provide has gone up by 6%. Neighbourhoods as a place to live has gone up at 6%. They're all detailed on the slide, so I won't go through them all now, but you will have them when we share. So we're really heartened to sort of see the work that we're doing is starting to have an impact in our communities. There have been 4 areas where we have seen a reduction in satisfaction. Sadly, one of those is the condition of our homes. So just to clarify, this is not the responsive repairs that Llanw do. This is the condition of our homes, that background investment. So that's again is where we have our focus going forward, where we have to be innovative and creative about how we spend our money to try and impact that customer satisfaction. And then there is also there has been a reduction in how we listen to our customers for our services. So in response to that, we have now developed our new engagement approach, which is our I'm In strategy. This is a new way of us engaging with our customers. It's ensuring that our customer voices are heard, but not just heard, but heard when decisions are made, so that they're coming in early enough so that it impacts what we do and how we respond to the issues out there. It's been co-produced with our customers, and we've used the co-production network to work with people to create it. And there's certainly a buzz with the customers that are involved. We had our first customer panel this week, and there was a lot of excitement about being involved in Valleys to Coast. It was really lovely to see. It's been built on a 360-degree approach to engagement. So we are using customers' foresight to test new ideas. We are getting their insight to help us see things through their eyes. We are allowing them oversight for what we do and scrutiny to keep us on the right track. And we're working with them in hindsight to reflect on the impact of our decisions. So we'll be doing surveys, walkabouts, focus groups and events. So please look out for our socials. We always love other people coming along to anything that we're doing publicly. And we really want more and more of our customers to get involved. So this is going to benefit us, it's going to benefit our customers, and hopefully the whole communities. So that's...
Okay.
That's it.
So I'll just, final slide then, and we can open up for questions, is just to give you a bit of a forward look in terms of our priorities. We move into the new financial year. So, key for us is investing in our homes. That's still important. That's right up there in terms of our top priority. But we know for us to be able to do that, we have got to increase our financial capacity and capability. So we've got a new growth ambition in terms of us building more homes. We are tripling our target in terms of from 100 homes a year to 300 homes a year. That does bring greater financial capacity to allow us to then invest into our existing homes. It also then is responding to the housing crisis. We know Wales will be looking to increase from 20,000 to 25,000 new homes. Supply and demand is completely outstripping. So we know we've got to be able to contribute to that. And it's really important for us in terms, because it gives us that opportunity to be able to reinvest those surpluses back into our existing homes. We're taking a different approach to how we do development and regeneration. So we are looking at this from a complete placemaking community basis, not just about, is it a plot of land, do we build 20 new homes? We're taking a much wider approach in terms of how do we take that forward. And I know James was presenting our regeneration and development plan to Cabinet, and we're happy to share our strategies, because we have 5 new business strategies now that will support our growth ambition, where we'll be looking at means of how we can use digital data and IT to really streamline business efficiencies, and then where we can use the investment and our growth for us to be able to regenerate our communities. So that's the then for me, and I'm happy then to open up for any questions. So I hope I was less than 20 minutes.
You were indeed. Well done. Gold star for Joe. Okay, thank you. We'll now take questions. Can I remind colleagues, because I know a number of members have indicated, if we can keep these to questions rather than speeches, that would be very helpful. Councillor Gebby, Deputy Leader, please. That wasn't directed specifically to you, but I'm sure
I can't imagine that it wasn't.
I'm sure you take on board the comments. Deputy Leader, please.
Thank you very much. Oh, whose mic is on? That's a bit weird, that was. So firstly, I was really pleased to hear about the wraparound service. I think that's welcomed and very much needed by the residents of our social housing. And can I thank your officers, particularly in a public space around ASB issues. They've been really helpful with a couple of residents of mine, and we had significant issues. I do have a couple of questions for you. That's about the management of your voids. As you would expect, they're empty for an awful long time, and I'd like to know how we're going to improve that, because that would give us additional homes for Bridgend residents. And what impact is the Employment Rights Bill going to have on your organisation? You referenced LANO, which is a 2-tier code. So you've got a 2-tier workforce, essentially, and how is that going to impact on you at a later date? Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you for that, Deputy Leader. Joe, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gebby. In terms of, and I'll pass the thanks on to the team as well regarding the ASB, and I know Emma's picking up a meeting with you a bit later in these things. But in terms of voids, so we have probably regular churn voids, because you think we have turnover of tenancies, and we're averaging probably 35 to 40 a month. So, and they're coming on, and we're churning those over quite quickly in terms of those coming through, plan who go in, turn those around, and then they're being available to let. That's significantly improved when we look at those empty homes. We do have then around 40 homes, because in total we have about 80 at this current point in time. That does move into what we call strategic voids. So we have 2 developments, so that's Oxford Court and Dinham, which are tied up because we're having conversations here with planning. So they're not homes that are available for us to relet because they're going through a different planning process. And then we have another 20 homes that we are working with the local authority and using through TACP funding about whether we can do something quite different to meet the housing need. So they could be, we're looking for maybe swapping up some of those homes with adaptations, some extensions. So there are different things that we're working for. So the churn voids are actually coming on stream much more quickly. What we've got then is the properties, which some of them are sitting with our development and others that we're working with the local authority about how can we bring those. It will just take a little bit longer time with those 20 because we're going through that funding and approach in terms of if then we're successful with the funding, we can bring those back in onto the work stream.
Thanks so much for that. Joe, next we've got Councillor Steve.
Oh, the employment. So yeah, we haven't got a two-tier workforce with Llanw, so we're part of a group in terms of how we operate in terms of them being a subsidiary. We had the issue around with the increase in the national insurance. We're a living wage employer. So in terms of what's coming through, in terms of what we're looking now in terms of some of the changes that are being made in terms of the bill, looking to see what that impact, but we're not a two-tier workforce. We have a group policy about how we do have separate T's and C's in terms of how they operate, but they're very much aligned in terms of some of those overall principles.
Okay, thank you for that, Joe. Next, we've got Councillor Steve Bletter, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Hello, Joe. I know it's something that we've discussed ad hoc when we've had our walk-arounds. I'm very passionate that every resident in the borough should have access to new generation fuel when it comes to their vehicles. Could you tell me if Valleys to Coast have a published strategy on the installation of EV charging points? And if you don't, would the organisation commit to producing one so that all residents have access to all fuel models of cars?
Okay, yeah. I'm going to ask my colleagues James and Paul if to come forward because there's two parts I wanted for us to do that. What we're doing in terms of our estates and new builds and requirements, and Paul can just talk through about what we're doing in terms of our consideration strategy around our own workforce vehicles. And I know we've been in conversations with the local authority.
Yes, so as Joe has alluded to, we are in the process of creating a regeneration plan. Which is identifying a number of key estates and key communities that we have, where we're looking to understand how we can regenerate those communities off the back of a land-led development. And part of that will include the introduction of EV chargers. EV chargers are not as simple as just installing them into every single property. If you installed them in every single property in one street, the whole system would fall down. And actually what needs to happen is there needs to be resilience within the sector that needs to actually be brought in terms of the infrastructure, not necessarily by us as the housing provider. But we are looking into that, and obviously as part of our new homes and as part of our specification and scope of services, we look to include EV charging.
Okay. Hi everyone. We've moved from diesel vehicles to hybrid vehicles, so that was over the last 2 years. We're currently going to extend those hybrid vehicles until we can decipher which is the best. Is it hydrogen or is it electric? So we've attended a lot of events where the larger vehicles that we got, our transits and tippers, because of the topography and the geography in which we work, those batteries would be drained very quickly because of the weight in which we're carrying. So what we're looking at then is a hybrid mix. But again, what we're looking at is where those can then be refueled. So we're currently extending our lease on our hybrid vehicles, which have reduced our CO2 emissions, until we can get a definitive answer on what is best for us. Because currently we've got about 70, 80 vehicles within Llanw, and it'll be a large expense for us to look at when we change those up. And also it's the payback on those vehicles as well. So we're seeing those battery and hydrogen hybrid vehicles circa sort of 50, 60,000. So it's a big investment and we want to get it right. So we've joined a number of groups within South Wales, which are looking at that with other authorities as well. So it's moving along, and we're not just leaving it because we got that pressure then again of our lease will end. So what we have found out is that if we don't choose a greener model, then we will get imposed with fines on our vehicles as well, which are quite substantial. So we're looking at whether we can put those electric vehicles into our supervisors, the smaller vehicles, and then stay with a hybrid option. So there's a lot of work that's going into it, and our transport manager is working closely with myself on that.
Thank you for that comprehensive response. Councillor Freya Bletz, who's next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation, Joe. It was really interesting, actually. This year, I've been returned back as the chair of SOC2 is the committee it's called. It's a scrutiny committee for the name's slightly changed, social services, health and wellbeing. And under the wellbeing aspect of that, I'm aware, not just in my ward, but a couple of other wards as well, that there is potentially, I wouldn't say an issue, but potentially a problem with some of our disabled residents, both disabled parents and people who have disabled children, as well as individuals with mental health issues, who might well be negatively impacted by some of the choices that are currently happening at V2C in terms of where they're being placed in their housing choices. So I just wondered if I could possibly, after the meeting, arrange to have a meeting with yourself and an appropriate person to just have a look at that, raise it, because obviously scrutiny is a critical friend, but the friendly part is there. So I just wondered if we could have a look at that and see if it's something we need to put on our forward work programme, please.
Of course.
Thank you.
That's it'd be useful to meet with Emma and Natalie, and we can arrange that after the meeting. That's not a problem.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Blatcher. Thank you, Joe. Next is Councillor Bennett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the report, Joe, and congratulations to you and your team for the improved satisfaction rates across your organisation. That's fantastic to hear. You mentioned your growth ambition to triple targets to build 300 homes a year, and I'm aware that some other RSLs have moved into working across various counties. So are those 300 homes specific to Bridgend County Borough?
No, good question, Heidi. So and thank you for that. It's not just in terms of Bridgend. We have already started building new homes in RCT. So we are looking at that wider regional footprint as us being part of the Cwm-Taf region, and how can we tap in to make sure we're part of the Cardiff City region in terms of where there's being funding being held. We know that there is limited in terms of how each local authority is allocated social housing grant, but what's important to us is Bridgend is our heartland, and when we are being able to build new homes, we can reinvest that money back into Bridgend.
Okay, thank you for that, Joe. Councillor Bennett. Next we have Councillor Thomas, please.
Yeah, thank you, Joe and Emma. The Deputy Leader referenced antisocial behaviour cases. I've sent, since COVID, I've noticed quite an increase in antisocial behaviour. I've sent quite a few caseloads to you on antisocial behaviour. Oops. And, some of the cases... Have I done something wrong here? No? Sorry about that. Some of the case... Okay. Some of the casework I've sent you has been quite complex because it's related to sometimes non-Valleys to Coast tenants. It's originated from other housing tenures, perhaps private rented sector or other housing associations. I'm sure you're aware that the Crime and Policing Bill is making its way through parliamentary scrutiny. I think it's at the committee stage in the House of Lords. And some of the provisions in that bill, they do give RSLs more provisions to tackle antisocial behaviour. So things like closure notices, respect orders, and court closure orders. And you can issue them to non-sitting tenants as well. So just wondering, really, given these provisions that could be really effective in tackling complex cases like the ones I just related to, will you be taking these provisions on board? And if not, what is your strategy to tackle some of these complex antisocial behaviour cases, please?
Okay, I'll hand over to Emma shortly, but I think one thing we have as an organisation, and we pride ourselves on that, is legal action should be the last resort. We try to work incredibly hard with our existing team and our partner resources to resolve these complex issues, because we do know in terms of what could happen is then you would end up evicting customers and they come back in a full circle in terms of them being homelessness. It doesn't solve the root cause, but there are times when those other different powers need to be there and we got to pull on those levers to use them. But I think it's something we've got to remember is that, what we've done is ensured that that's action of last resort, really. But Emma, do you want to just come through?
So obviously we take a trauma-informed approach to any sort of antisocial behaviour or issues. We know that most antisocial behaviour has trauma in its background. So we always try to work with partners to try and resolve the situation in situ, but we'd also appreciate that, we don't just look after one person, it's a whole community, so we do need to take that kind of balance into consideration. We use all powers that are available to us if they are right for that circumstance. So we do use injunctions. The incident that the Councillor Gebby mentioned, there was an injunction used there that was led by Valleys to Coast. We would also talking currently with police about closure orders. So they are a facility that if the police work with us are things that we can use currently. And again, if appropriate, so any powers that become available to us, we will review those. We will see if we are the appropriate agency to take the lead. And if we are, we will certainly use them.
Thank you very much for that, Emma and Joe. Councillor Thomas. Next, we have Councillor Llewellyn Hopkins, please. Councillor Llewellyn Hopkins. Right. We'll take the next question whilst we address those technical problems for Councillor Llewellyn Hopkins. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got two questions, if I may. First of all, can I ask what procedures are followed when tenants report drug use or drug dealing within V2C properties? And my other question is, some tenants have mentioned to me that the need for roof repairs, which they reported before COVID, and still haven't been carried out. And I was wondering whether I could contact the appropriate person so that I could deal with that. Thank you.
Yes, so I mean, in relation to the roof repair, by all means, contact myself or send the hub an email and I will look into that sort of specific address. There are roofing works that are major works. As we said, the condition of our homes is an issue that we're aware of, and there are works that are on programmes for the future. But if there is a specific address that we can look at that. Sorry, what was the first question?
About drug use and drug dealing?
So drug use is a crime. And very much a police issue. However, Valleys to Coast take it very seriously, and we're a support agency within that. It is a breach of tenancy, but we do require there to be police action for us to follow up any kind of legal solution to that. Although we do out and talk to people, we understand that there are support services that are needed. So if there are any things like that that are appropriate that we can signpost or link people into, we undertake all those works. And again, if there's a specific issue, drop me a line and I'm more than happy to look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Llewellyn Hopkins, please. Can we just check that Councillor Hopkins is audible?
In technology, sorry guys. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. I just want to know, what will you do to ensure the infrastructure can cope with the volume of houses you intend to build? Thank you.
So when we're looking at our development, that we are taking a much more strategic approach in terms of where. So we are linked in with, so when we're looking at the ones within Bridgend is very much part of the LDP. So we're working with the local authority. So we will be part of that planning permission. When we're doing our regen approach, all of that in terms of engaging with the community, because there is already existing infrastructure, and what do we need to do in terms of if there's some kind of changes. And again, we'll work with the local authority in planning around those in.
Okay, thank you for that, Joe. Next, we've got Councillor Penhale Thomas, please.
Diolch, Mr Mayor, and diolch Joe and Emma for the presentation. Really encouraging to hear that the satisfaction stats are up. Can't speak for other members, but certainly I've noticed a positive change in both the timeliness of resolving complaints and in being able to share more detail as to what approach is being taken as well for residents, so thank you for that. Something of a rider to Councillor Gebby's question. Joe, I think you mentioned it in the past year. You've said you'd purchased 2024 properties, so you're likely to be aware there are many and varied long-term private empty properties across our communities. I think it's 1,200 at the last count here in Bridgend. Not a problem unique to us here in Bridgend, but certainly a scourge for many communities. So I'm wondering, what interest and appetite are you having up in the ante on purchasing long-term privately owned empty properties to allow someone, a family, any type of household makeup, a place to call home?
Okay, yeah, thank you for that feedback, Councillor Thomas as well. So I'll ask James, because this is very much part of our development and regen opportunities that we want to take forward.
Yep, so as I mentioned previously, we are looking at a regeneration plan, which allows us to identify strategic acquisitions. There is funding available through TACP for the purchase of those properties as well, to bring them back into our stock. Usually those properties are previous right to buys. So we are taking a strategic approach. There is a acquisitions policy that we are forming and approving, and the main emphasis will be on homes that we can purchase within our regeneration areas. There is also something else to consider in regards to the standard that we need to bring these homes up to. So when a property gets put onto the market for the open market, we have to spend a significant amount of money on that property to bring it up to a minimum standard, which can run into 50, 60, 70,000 pounds on a normal 3-bedroom property. And that's something that we're considering as well. And what we'd rather do is emphasise our acquisitions within our strategic regen areas.
Okay, thank you for that, James. Next, we've got Councillor Winstanley, please.
Thank you. And I think I'm building on that question a little bit, because both that and what Councillor Gabby said about voids as well, I've noticed that there are significant numbers of empty properties around, some of which may be valleys to coast and some of which may also be right to buy. And also the general state of the communal areas of the social areas. And it would be good to see a dedicated approach to ensuring that maintenance is carried out on those external areas. I'm thinking of grass that's not been cut on properties that have been empty for a couple of years. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we shouldn't have properties that have been empty other than some of the real strategic ones, and where we have those strategic empty properties, we've got to make sure there is a responsibility for us to make sure health and safety, they're boarded up and they are regularly monitored. We have, if you see Inform This, we had earlier in this week around 2 of our properties. We went out, we've cleared the area. So can you just, and we want to make sure in terms of the change, when they are those ones where we are boarding up, they will be regularly checked and maintained. But we want to ensure that they are not bringing the rest of the community down.
Thank you very much for that, Joe. Councillor Winstanley. Next is Councillor Martin Hughes, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The weekend before last, we saw some real torrential rain, and unfortunately, a number of culverts in the Meister East area were breached. One of them was a culvert that belongs to Valleys to Coast, just above Hale Dyfed, and a number of properties in Bron-y-Waun, which is a street partly owned by yourselves, were affected, and one household were decanted to a hotel. It happened in the middle of the night. Valleys to Coast did respond very quickly, and residents appreciate that, and as well as the South Wales Fire and Rescue Service, and a lot of work was done to assist those residents at the time. Obviously, it's something that does worry the residents. I just wonder what the plans are to work with BC to try to prevent such a situation from arising again, which will be difficult because of the climate change that we all witness. But probably more importantly, what measures will be put in place to try to help those residents who are effectively downstream from that culvert, to help them to mitigate the effects of future flooding events.
We recognise with the pressure of the change of the climate, the sheer velocity of the rainfall is what's causing us the issues. And probably when the culverts were put in, that wasn't, expected in terms of that. So we'd be really keen to work with BCBC in terms of what we can do in terms of maintenance and management. But go on, Emma.
Sorry, I know about this culvert. So yes, I mean it was the alarm went off. The culvert was clear. It was just the volume of the water that the culvert was never designed to take that. We're already in conversations with BCBC about what we can do to look to resolve it. There are a number of culverts in that area, so I don't think it was just ours that overflew. There were a few of them, so I think it is going to take a coordinated approach to ensure that there is resolutions. As you say, we decanted our customers. We'll undertake any works that are needed, but it is a climate change issue, so we are looking for that kind of like longer term solution. We have sandbags that we can distribute, but it is going to take a bigger culvert really to overcome that. Okay.
Thanks very much, Emma. Jo, Councillor Hughes. Next, we've got Councillor Granville, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jo, good presentation. Marlis Estate and Old Kennelly, there's far too many damp houses. I've had 3 families moved out of Marlis Estate because it's damp, right? And it's unacceptable. I'm having complaints all the time about it. And the other thing that was said to me this week, and I'm going to write to the Chief Executive, I've asked the lady to write to me. She made a formal complaint, and she was told on the phone by an operative in your organisation, you're now going to the bottom of the list. That's unacceptable again, right? So she's writing to me formally, and I will take it up with the Chief Executive to write to you to answer that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you can give me those individual cases in terms of, we can look into those, and I'll come back to you, Councillor Granville.
Thank you for that, Emma. Jo, Councillor Granville. Next, we've got Councillor Jenkins, and then finally we've got Councillor Tilsey, and that will be the end of questions. Oh, and Councillor Dibbs, I do apologise. We've got some interference, but that has gone now. So, Councillor Jenkins is next, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chief Executive, for sharing your vision. Your report is quite comprehensive, and I thank you for that. But my question is based purely about, and you raise the subject on repairs. I am heartened to see that, you're reducing these, etc. But in the strategy and the vision, we're going to build new homes. And along with new homes come sooner or later repairs. So your housing stock is growing. And we're grateful for that because we all need homes, more homes, and strategy by the Welsh Government. But could you explain to us your policy or your revenue stream, or what percentage even of the income that you are pulling in from the rental of homes is set aside to mitigate future repairs and to keep them as minimum as possible? Because those of us that are aware and old enough to remember the situation that led to a perfect storm many years ago with this authority that led to not only your organisation but many other organisations coming into being. I don't want to see that happening again, because all the good work and the house thing may fail again, and it's important that we keep on top of it. And as I say, I do appreciate that you're doing your best, and I see the figures of repairs you did last year. But if you could explain to me, because that's probably the biggest bugbear, you very rarely get thank yous. You get the moans, don't you? And these people moan about, oh, I've been waiting for this. Some of it small, some of it large. I appreciate it can't be done overnight because the finances are not really there. But to mitigate this in the future, and repeating, can you tell us how you're going to keep on top of these repairs and what sort of strategy there is to set aside the revenue to keep this up to date?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and it's two things really. When we're building new homes, we're building homes that have much more longevity, are much more easier to maintain in terms of what we're doing. So we're very mindful of that when we're building our new homes. But part of the funding that we put forward is we ensure that there is costs. We build in costs to include repairs and housing management, because we need that community and housing support, so that each and every individual development will have a model where we're able to include. So as we're growing new homes, we're also growing the capability of our housing management and our repairs. And we've already seen that with Llanw over the last 12 months, where we've grown considerably with the workforce. So part of that investment, what we're saying is not just about building homes, we're ensuring that we've got that frontline service delivery that's going hand in hand.
Thanks for that, Joe and Councillor Jenkins. Then we have Councillor Tilsley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm grateful for the amount of work being done in North Kennelly, which I represent with my two colleagues here. And I have to thank you for the wonderful exterior presentations you've made to the elderly person's bungalow. There's a real transformation, there really is. So thank you for that very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. It's lovely. Pass it on to the team as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Tilsley. Councillor Colin Davis, the final question, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I was interested to hear about your extending into RCT. So is this just taking up a one-off opportunity, or is it part of a strategy? If it is part of a strategy, tell us your thinking behind that, because obviously as Bridgend County councillors, we're concerned with what happens in Bridgend County. So tell us a little bit about your thinking behind that, if it is a strategy, and how far is it going to go? RCT, Neath Talbot, the Vale. Just tell us a little bit about those plans. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. We have shared with the Cabinet members our regeneration and development strategy. So it is part of our growth strategy that we are moving out. It's not just concentrating in Bridgend. Bridgend is our heartland areas where our majority of stock is. But we have a responsibility to work with Welsh Government to address housing need. We will work with other RSLs and partner with other RSLs as part of that. So what we've talked about is that we are very much part of the Cwmtaf region in terms of the footprint. So we do see ourselves as part of that wider region, but we will align ourselves with the Cardiff City region and Swansea Bay. So that's in terms of that geographical of where there are opportunities strategically that we would consider and look to have opportunities to develop. But what we've always said, what we're not going to do is turn our back on our existing communities and ensure our investment comes back into Bridgend. But we're happy if there's another time to share wider in terms of those strategies, then we can do, so that's not a problem at all.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Joe. Just for the minutes and for the procedure, can I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation to note the presentation?
Happy to move.
So I forgot that. A mover and a seconder, all in agreement? Yes? And can we thank you for that presentation, Joe, and your colleagues, Emma, James and Paul. That was really helpful. No doubt you'll be back in front of us next year. You'll also be going to scrutiny, and I know you'll have that ongoing engagement with Cabinet members, and in addition to that, a member development session with colleagues. So we look forward to that, and thank you for your time today.
Yeah, Diolch. Thank you for the invite. Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.
Colleagues, we are now going to rejig the agenda slightly, and I'm going to ask the leader to give his report first. I'm getting looks, I'm getting stares off the Chief Executive about this rejigging of the agenda. Do people know that the agenda is proposed to be rejigged?
I was told it was a suggestion by the Chief Executive.
Right, with the Chief Executive.
Order you want to do with it.
It's the Chief Executive's last meeting, so the Chief Executive will go first. Thank you.
That nearly ruined that, didn't it? Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your indulgence for allowing me to say a few words of gratitude in my farewell announcement to my last full council meeting before I retire at the end of the month. So this is my last week in work after over 30 years working for Bridgend County Borough Council and its predecessor authority, Ogger Borough Council, and 6.5 years in which I've been immensely proud to serve as your Chief Executive Officer. I can think of very few things that have survived since Ogden Borough Council, off the top of my head, just me and the carpets inside the committee rooms and outside the council chamber. And unfortunately, they've worn much better than I have. And Councillor Griffiths reminds me. For those of you who don't know me well, my career in Bridgend started in leisure, pre-local government reorganisation back in 1993, with notable successes in due course around the Healthy Living Partnership with Halo and the formation of the Owen Cultural Trust, initially as part of the Education and Leisure Directorate and then in the Social Services and Wellbeing Directorate, then on to become the Director of Communities in 2013 and finally as Chief Executive from 2019. I always say my claim to fame in Bridgend is that I have worked at Chief Officer level in each of our main directorates and like to think that has given me a fairly unique corporate perspective. I'd be lying therefore if I didn't say it feels a bit strange to be leaving a place and an organisation that I have such great affection for and where I've spent the vast majority of my working life. But I've also found that for me, the last few weeks have been an opportunity for honest reflection and to now thank the very many people who have helped me throughout my career here. I'm proud of so many of the things I will leave behind and what we have collectively accomplished in Bridgend. One of the things I relayed to a meeting of my senior managers last week was that the best piece of advice I received early in my managerial career was to surround myself with good people. And if you do so, occasionally they will make you look good. So thank you to everyone here who very occasionally have made me look good. And in particular to my magnificent team on the Corporate Management Board. I've been blessed working with such incredibly talented and committed individuals. Can I please also take this opportunity to thank Mr Mayor, Councillor Hugh David, whose time as leader coincided with most of my tenure as Chief Executive, and in particular with whom I shared leadership responsibility for the organisation during the incredibly challenging COVID years and during the height of austerity. I can't help but think we were dealt a tough hand. But thank you, Hugh, for your unerring support, empathy and enormous commitment. Thank you also to Councillor Spanswick, the current leader. I am fortunate that I've known Councillor Spanswick for a very long time, way back to his original time as an elected member and cabinet member in the noughties. John has always been passionate and resident-focused and resolute in his desire to improve public services for all our residents. Thank you also to all our cabinet members, past and present, with whom I've always shared a good relationship and an appreciation of all your hard work and dedication. And thank you also to Councillor Amanda Williams and Councillor Ross Pennell-Thomas for the positive relationships I've been able to develop with you. Of course, any Chief Executive needs a good relationship with a leader in Cabinet, but I've always been acutely aware that I'm the Chief Executive for all members, and both Councillor Williams and Councillor Pennell-Thomas have been very supportive, discreet when they needed to be, and mature in their approach. And while many of you may have different political perspectives and sometimes different views on priorities, all of you, as our elected members, in my experience, care hugely about your local communities, and I have enormous respect for anyone who puts themselves forward to become an elected representative in order to add value and make a difference. Importantly, thank you also to all my colleagues, wherever they work, within the organisation or as partners outside of it. One of the Council's obvious strengths that I never fail to be impressed by is the strong sense of affinity for the organisation and for Bridgend the place that so many colleagues show. Most of our staff live locally and care deeply about delivering and improving local services to our residents. Additionally, one of the other things that's pleased me most in the feedback I get from staff is how the vast majority agree that the organisation's culture is caring, compassionate and supportive. I'm particularly proud of that being something we've retained and enhanced despite the many challenges we have faced over recent years. Please don't take all that for granted, because I know it is not the same in every council or organisation, and it is a huge advantage to us that most of our staff feel that way. For me, now I'm leaving, perspective is important, and for us all to recognise, I hope, that contrary to perhaps some of the perceptions of the Council, particularly on social media, that we are regarded externally and independently as a well-run, good council, prudently managed and financially stable by the Welsh Local Government Association and by our regulators, including the Wales Audit Office, Estyn and the Care Inspectorate for Wales in their regular assessments. We have performance that is often good or very good compared to other Welsh local authorities and our neighbours. I recognise that is not always the perception everyone has of the Council, and that is something we need to work harder on. But some of the persistent negativity disappoints me because colleagues tell me it does, of course, have an impact on their morale and motivation. Yes, there are many areas where we need to improve. Of course there are, not least because there is now no local authority that can discharge fully all of its functions in view of the ongoing resource restrictions and demand expectations. And that means that the Council is constantly juggling resources and priorities, and it means that sometimes, unfortunately, people would disagree or be disappointed and frustrated with some decisions that are made and some of the things we are no longer able to do as well as we did, if at all. But to conclude, for many of us, public service is something that we do because we care passionately about delivering services that help and assist local people. It has certainly been the driver for me throughout my career. For many areas of service, only the local authority can provide the help and assistance that people need or deliver the services that allow people to effectively go about their day-to-day activities comfortably and safely. Most of our staff do not work for the kudos, nor for financial reward, when often there are higher salaries comparatively in the private sector. And neither, unfortunately, is it done because the roles are regarded as sexy, even when we speak to our family or friends down the pub. But I simply do not recognise some of the caricature of local government as somehow being inherently lazy, inefficient, or even corrupt. I have never seen or believed that. To misquote an old Shania Twain song, and I appreciate that might be a cultural reference that some of you may not get, so you're a local government officer. That don't impress me much. But truthfully, my farewell message is I think it should. Why? Because I've seen on a day-to-day basis the lengths colleagues readily go to in order to provide services in the best way that they can. Whether it is a frontline service providing for our most vulnerable in social care, or ensuring there's a roof over the head of someone who unfortunately find themselves homeless, to all of the teaching staff and assistants ensuring our young people in our schools have the best start in life and reach their potential, to our street scene staff working all hours and in all weather throughout the year to provide vital community services, and to all of our colleagues that provide critical support services to ensure the council runs efficiently and effectively. So maybe being a local government officer should impress everyone. I know it does me. I believe in local government, I believe in this council, I think you're in safe hands moving forward, and so in the words of the council motto, while I am leaving the council, please move onwards with confidence. Thank you.
Get many of those in Bridgend. Leader, please.
Thank you. Follow that. I'm not going to do the song. No. Right, so I've got two announcements. The first one, get out the way, because it's something that can't get through a day without mentioning it, with the G word. The first is just like to hope all members saw the recent briefing note on grass cutting. I'm aware that council grass cutting teams are making their way around urban parts of the county borough. This year's service started slightly later than usual, as council had to ensure that staff were qualified and ready to undertake the work. Driver and pedestrian safety have been prioritised, and the service has targeted 48 busy locations to ensure there are clear lines of sight at junctions and roundabouts. To ensure grass can be kept quickly and efficiently, the service has also divided the county borough into two zones, north and south, and two grass cutting teams have been assigned to each zone, with one working to the east of that zone and the other covering the west. For optimum efficiency, the teams are following established grass cutting routes which are designed to maximise cutting times and minimise travel. While the length of grass in some areas meant it's not been possible to sweep the litter before the first cut take place, assurances have been received that this will be carried out in advance of all future cuts. Our grass cutting teams are also taking care not to remove or disturb areas where wild orchids or other rare flowers are thriving, and several no-mow areas are being maintained to promote greater biodiversity. So I'm sure members will want to join me in thanking residents for their patience and understanding while this issue has been tackled. Now on to other announcements. I'm not going to follow up, but Mark, your outgoing chief executive. So this is your last council as our outgoing chief exec, and I want to say just a few words as leader of the council. I'll try to be brief, as I know that Mark and group leaders also want to say a few words of their own following this. I have to confess, so when I sat down to consider what I was going to say, the first thing I thought I should do was double check my calendar and confirm it really has been just 6 years since Mark took up the reins of chief executive. We've just heard how much has gone on during that 6 years, if not before. I say this because when you consider all the significant events and complex challenges this authority has faced over the years, it strikes me we have been very lucky to have had Mark at the helm. This was an interim capacity at first. As we looked towards filling the role in the longer term, it quickly became apparent that Mark was the ideal candidate. He has consistently proven himself to be that rare breed of officer, one who knows the council inside out, who's respected by staff, members and partners alike, and who's capable of offering the kind of realistic, strategic leadership that an organisation of this size and type demands. I know that Mark's support and advice has been greatly valued, not just by myself, by past leaders and cabinet members of his authority. It should come as no surprise to know that Mark has dedicated his working life to local government. He hasn't said the number of years, but I think it's close to 40. I believe he started in 1988, but we're getting close to that 40 mark, as part of a charitable trust attached to the London Borough of Redbridge. Later becoming assistant manager of Barkingside Leisure Centre, before moving on to the leisure department of Oldham Borough Council in 1993 as a recreation officer. Since that early start, at least 20 years of Mark's career have been spent working in senior management positions. That process culminated when he took up the post of corporate director for communities, which proved to be the final step in his career to becoming chief executive. Over time, Mark has developed both an expert working knowledge of how local government operates and the special skills that are often required for navigating the relationships between members, officers, partner organisations and the people we serve. Whether it's been his outstanding vision in helping to establish partnerships with Arwen Cultural Trust and Halo Leisure, which have protected and enhanced valuable local services, or steering authority through the difficulties of a global pandemic, while protecting our most vulnerable residents, I believe Mark can and should feel truly proud of his time in local government. So on behalf of all members here at Bridgend Council, Mark, I'd like to say thank you for your strong vision, your shrewd insight, and your excellent strategic leadership. So we all hope you are very happy and well-earned retirement.
Thank you, Leader. Next, we have Group Leader of the Official Opposition, Councillor Amanda Williams, please.
Thank you very much. I will be leaving after this. I've hung on. I've got a meeting I'm late for now, but I've hung on just to say goodbye to Mark. I'll be brief because I know there's a lot on the agenda, and I'll save my stories for when I've got a drink in my hand later in the week to say goodbye officially. But just to say thank you very much, Mark. I've known you since 2017. We've had our arguments and disagreements. We've also had many a frank discussion, but you've always been very honest with me and very supportive, and I wanted to thank you on behalf of myself and my group, and we wish you all the best in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. Next, Councillor Penhill Thomas, please.
Yeah, diolch, Mr Mayor. Can I just first of all associate myself with the comments already made? Some 4 decades of service to local government in a variety of roles has already been mentioned. That's quite some stint. As the leader has already mentioned, it began back in 1988. A trip down memory lane tells me it was an era where double denim was all the fashion rage. Shame you're not wearing it today, Mark. And funny how things come about again. Some famous people were born in 1988. Rupert Grint, Adele, Ross Penhill Thomas. Die Hard, Crocodile Dundee 2, The Land Before Time and Beetlejuice were all released in the box office. Mistletoe and Wine, The Only Way Is Up, and I Should Be So Lucky by My Stig's own Kylie Minogue, riding high in the charts. Listen to this one. The Netherlands became the second country in the world connected to the internet when you started work. And the floppy disk was something we saved files on. Now, while ever the diplomat in your general character, Mark, we've not been without our disagreements. I remember an exchange early on in my time as a member over My Stig Market, and I'll be quite honest. I thought to myself, hey, I don't think I like this bloke. But certainly, in the time over which we've worked together, Mark, I've recognised and come to appreciate your candour, your sage advice, and your passion for what this local authority stands for. Managing relationships with elected members can be fraught with risk, with clashes of personality, and sometimes strong differences of opinion. But in almost all circumstances, while the journey in getting there may differ, the end goal has always been the same, which is wanting the best for the residents of this county. BCBC is never and will never be without its challenges, and a fair few, as you've already mentioned, have been thrown your way in recent years, not least the pandemic, financial pressures, and not to be too curt about it, the sustainability and indeed the survival of this organisation in recognising that we provide cradle-to-grave services. As David Ewan might say, a mohid, we're still here, and you've more than played your role in that. Some chief execs like the bombast, the PR, the shiny projects. In my experience, I think you've gone about things with a sense of quiet determination, while increasingly encourage members to take a long-term view in decision-making, a concept I hope can continue. And while you've done your bit, I don't doubt you'll find other ways to contribute. But for at least a short time, I think Mrs. Shepherd deserves a rest from what have no doubt been 7 years' worth of badly timed phone calls, urgent messages, and working all hours around the clock. Diolch o galon, Mark. Llongyfarchiadau. All best wishes from members of my group on your well-deserved retirement.
Thank you for that, Councillor Penhill Thomas. And I have to add a few comments myself, as someone who's worked with you for a short period. In all the 20 years I worked with you, I don't think I ever saw you lose your cool or even raise your voice. Well, not with me anyway, and certainly not, and certainly not to my face anyway. And you have always been exceptionally calm and flappable, reasonable, diplomatic, assured, reassuring, and pragmatic. And these skills and values are essential in that role, because every day brings a new crisis, it brings a new challenge, doesn't it? A new problem, competing priorities, endless emails and phone calls. But you answered every one. You are a workaholic, and you really do now deserve that retirement. And of those challenges, we've talked about the biggest challenge that certainly I've ever experienced, and that was getting us through the pandemic. And we met that challenge, and that was because of your leadership. You've always been respectful of members, the role of members, and respectful of staff and the role of staff. And that's crucial in any chief executive. And I hope, and I know that that will continue with the new chief executive as part of the culture of this organisation that has to continue. So thank you for your support to me. Thank you for your service to the people of Bridgend County Borough, because it is a record of service you can be exceptionally proud of. And I'm sure Mrs. Shepherd, I think Mrs. Shepherd is very happy to have more time with you now in your very happy retirement. Thank you.
Can I just thank you all for your kind comments? Much appreciated. I think Mrs. Shepherd, actually, the last thing she wants is me to spend more time at home. That's another story. But thank you very much. It's genuinely appreciated, and thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have a small comfort break. So we will be back here at 5:20. So that's 5:20. We will reconvene the meeting. rejoined us online, and it is 5:22. So I will now give my announcements as Mayor. My first engagement as a new Mayor was the annual Meg and Jane's Family Day at the Two Brews in Brackler. It's always a special and emotional day for the Sim family, as it's in memory of their baby Meg and Jane, and raised £1,430 for the small Welsh charity Morgan's Wings Miscarriage Support. Major enhancements and accessibility improvements by the Council have been completed at Bedford Park Local Nature Reserve, and were officially launched an event at the historic Kevin Cribbo Ironworks featuring terrific and original performances by pupils from Fachysger, Mynydd Cynfig and Kevin Cribbo Primary Schools. The project is a credit to the Green Spaces team that secured funding from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, but also would not have been delivered without the dedicated volunteers of Kevin Grove that have committed 40 years to preserving, conserving and promoting the scheduled ancient monument. A very poignant and unforgettable moment for me was laying a wreath at Menning Gate at Ypres, where the last post is sounded every night to commemorate the fallen of World War I. Visiting with Boys Coitrain Male Voice Choir that sang at Menning Gate, we also attended a special service at the Welsh National Memorial. I expressed our gratitude to the Mayor of Langemak, Paul Capel, and the towns and villages across Flanders for the care and reverence that they showed to the battlefields and resting places of the Welsh soldiers that made the ultimate sacrifice. I can assure members that I paid my own way and there was no cost at all to the Council. A new partnership between Bridgend RFC and the Bont charity, supported by Novomatic, an international company with its UK headquarters here in Bridgend, was launched on the weekend, with fundraising efforts kicked off with the launch of the Ravens new alternative kit. Events took place this month to celebrate the 200th anniversary of Porthcawl. On 10th of June 1825, King George IV gave royal assent for a new railway, originally a horse-drawn tramway, to be built from the new coal mines of the Llymby to a new harbour. These events included a flower and musical festival at All Saints Church, and also joined the volunteers at Porthcawl Museum as they retraced the original 1825 railway journey. It was a little quicker on a double-decker bus though. We received a very warm welcome at Maesteg Town Hall and from Maesteg Town Council, recognising the very close and shared history and vital link that resulted in the development of the two towns. Finally, I would like to offer my personal congratulations to Councillor Rhys-Good on his wedding to Ian. I know how happy they make each other, and I'm sure we all wish them the very best in their future together. We will now receive the first report on today's substantive report on today's agenda, and that is a report, the Corporate Director for Communities, on the Affordable Housing Supplementary Planning Guidance. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And for the purposes of the recording, my name is Janine Nightingale and I'm the Corporate Director.
Sorry, I'll just interrupt you. I know that Councillor Bledsoe now wishes to declare an interest. He spoke to me in the break. So Councillor Bledsoe is declaring a prejudicial interest and we'll be leaving for this item. So we'll just wait for Councillor Bledsoe to leave the chamber, and then Janine can continue to give the report. And once we wait for Councillor Bledsoe to leave, we should welcome as well the Group Manager for Planning and Development, Jonathan Parsons, and also the Strategic Planning Policy Team Leader, Adam Provost. I hope I've got your title correct, Adam. Okay, please continue, Janine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I nearly called you leader then, Mr. Mayor. Apologies, leader. I'm getting very confused. So the purpose of this item with you this afternoon is to inform Council of the outcome of our Affordable Housing Supplementary Planning Guidance consultation, and to seek your approval, Council, and to adopt the final form of this guidance. Now, in terms of background, the existing affordable housing supplementary planning guidance was adopted 10 years ago under the previous local development plan, and this replacement has been prepared to update that guidance and support the new affordable housing policies that we've got in our new replacement local development plan. Now, from the outset, this has been championed by Councillor Granville, who is the chair on behalf of the Development Control Committee. Now, paragraph 2.8 of the report provided in front of you today provides a summary of the specific guidance within the new supplementary planning guidance, and it includes the level and type of affordable housing required in different areas, how that should be clustered within developments, nomination processes, and transfer values, all of which would inform all our future Section 106 planning agreements. If I move on to the current situation with the document, now following members' training at the Development Control Committee, Cabinet approved a draft of that supplementary planning guidance for consultation on the 4th of February this year. The consultation was held on that guidance from the 13th of February through to the 27th of March this year, and was well advertised via the Council's consultation portal, social media, and direct targeting of approximately 150 stakeholders. Now, these stakeholders included all elected members, town and community councils, together with various planning consultants, house builders, and housing associations that operate locally. Now, during this extensive publication, we only received 3 representations, and there was no wholesale objections to the SPG, which reflects well on its robustness. All of the comments made and the responses to those comments are with you today and are included as Appendix 2, but there are only 3 substantive changes that we deemed were necessary to the original draft. And I'll take you quickly through those. The first was enhanced clarification regarding the clustering of affordable homes within mixed tenure developments. The second was confirmation that the Council will consult with developers to inform RSL nominations. And the third was clarity that alternative viability models can be used in addition to the Council's model. Now, a substantive element of the SPG concerns the setting of new transfer values for nil grant was affordable housing, and we worked regionally to arrive at an appropriate method for this. It is important to note that no objections were raised to this methodology as part of the consultation, and it will provide us with a mechanism to update these transfer values annually in a transparent way while promoting regional consistency. The consultation responses and resulting amendments were presented to Cabinet on the 13th of May. And Cabinet approved presenting the final form of this supplementary guidance to you today to seek its adoption. A non-technical summary has now also been added to the front of the SPG to make it a little easier to understand. If adopted, this SPG will add weight to the interpretation and application of the LDP's affordable housing policies. It'll provide much more detailed advice to applicants and will become a material consideration in the determination of our planning applications going forward. So if I can now please take you to Section 9 of the report, and it's recommended to Council the following. That firstly, you note the contents of the report and approve the officer's consultation responses and the resultant amendments in the SPG as we set out in Appendix 2. Secondly, you adopt this final form of supplementary planning guidance as attached at Appendix 1, and that we use it for immediate application in making those development management decisions. So we use it straight away for planning applications. Thirdly, you authorise officers to make any necessary minor changes prior to the publication of the SPG. And fourthly, you authorise officers to publish annual updates to the transfer values as detailed in Appendix A of the SPG, and that's important to ensure that they remain current. So thank you, Mr. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Janine. To bring the report to order, can I have a mover and seconder of the report?
I'll formally move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Are there any speakers or questions on the report, please? Deputy Leader.
No questions, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just a thank you to officers for taking on board my queries around affordable housing and what that actually means in relation to planning terminology. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you for that, Deputy Leader. Can't see that anyone else wants to come in. So do I have a mover and seconder for the report's recommendations? No, the report. Do we have a mover and second for the recommendations, please?
I'll second.
All agreed. We'll now move on to, and thank you all for your attendance. I know some of you will be staying for the next item. Yeah, we'll just ask Councillor Bledsoe to return to the meeting, please. Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to the next report, and that is a report of the Monitoring Officer, and that is a proposed amendment to the scheme of delegation of functions of the authority. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Leader. The purpose of this report is to seek your approval for a series of amendments to our scheme of delegations. These are quite technical in nature, and therefore I'm going to pass you over to Jonathan, who can explain it far better than I can.
Thank you for that, Kelly, and over to the Group Manager for Planning and Development. Jonathan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the purpose of the recording, my name is Jonathan Parsons, Group Manager for Planning and Development Services. Just to give some background to the reason we bring in the report to Council for members' benefit. Council officers are required under their statutory functions to enter land as main part of their duties. And this may include planning enforcement investigations, visits in association with planning applications, visits in connection with tree preservation orders or dangerous structures. And this legislation does allow for officers to do so. An example of this would be Town and Country Planning Act, would allow any person duly authorised in writing to enter land for the purposes of surveying it in connection with any permission or application, etc. Other legislation as well, other than planning legislation, confers other rights of entry on for public authorities. But the key principle is that officers usually need to be named and carry the correct authorisation with them when they do enter land. Now, as a result of some legislative changes, the current scheme of delegation of functions requires updating to provide officers with all the necessary rights of entry powers under the relevant legislation. By way of an example, the Listed Buildings Act 1990 has now been superseded by the Historic Environment Wales Act 2023 and therefore no longer applies to Wales. So we need to update our scheme of delegations to reflect this change in national legislation and to take on board other legislation that has come in the intervening period. A list of the relevant legislation is provided in the report, and if approved by Council, the sub-delegations for the Corporate Director communities will be updated to further delegate provisions to the Group Manager and to ensure that the lists of named officers are updated on a regular basis. And I have to emphasise that officers have to be personally authorised to have these rights of entry, and if they're not authorised, then that could prove problematic in future action against unauthorised development, etc. It is therefore recommended that Council approves the amendments to the scheme of delegated functions as set out in the relevant paragraphs of the report, and delegate authority to the monitoring officer to make amendments to the scheme of delegation of functions where such amendment is required to be made so as to comply with any legislative provision. And that sounds a bit of a mouthful, but we have to bring it to Council because only Council can make the change to the scheme of delegation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that overview of the report, Jonathan. Are there any speakers? Councillor Colin Davis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got two questions really. So the first one is in respect of one aspect of the current situation proposal in 3.1. So I fully acknowledge there's a need for officers to have delegated powers when it comes to entering properties, particularly, at short notice. But can you explain, Jonathan, why the Section 106 of the Infrastructure Wales Act is in there? Is there something in that particular act which relates to entry to buildings? If you could just explain to us why that's in there amongst all the other things. Thanks. I got a second question then. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Davis. Jonathan, please.
Yes, there is. There is that particular act refers to larger scale developments, and as officers of this authority, even though that decision might be taken by another authority or from national government, it is down to officers of this authority to ensure that if there's any breaches of that consent, we would have to investigate and we would have to enter land under that particular legislation.
Okay, thank you for that, Jonathan. Second question, please, Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And then along with the report, is there a policy and process that accompanies this report, or should in the background is not presented in terms of officers needing to enter buildings, sometimes dangerous buildings, hazardous substances, etc. So I'm thinking particularly around health and safety issues. Is there training involved, special equipment, 2 or 3 people, etc., HSE equipment, etc. So if you could just explain a little bit more about that, thanks.
It's a very good point, Councillor. And although what we've listed is all the legislation that's relevant to the workloads that we currently carry out, and planning is very cross discipline within the authority, and we've had to list everything that we would potentially get involved with. Hazardous Substances Act. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going into hazardous environments, because there is other legislation that would cover that type of visit, and with dangerous structures similar. There will be other health and safety legislation that would cover that. But just to give you an example, previously during my career, I had to carry out visits to mineral sites, so that's open cast mines and quarry sites, and it was under the Town and Country Planning Act that I had my rights of entry. But that didn't mean to say I could just wander onto the site as I wished. It had to be followed. A process had to be followed where I had to have the necessary personal protection equipment and go through the necessary briefings. And similarly, when I've worked in other environments such as the Port Talbot Steelworks, again, although I had the rights to enter, I still had to go through the necessary safety briefings. So, although the legislation provides that right of entry, it doesn't override the need for other health and safety legislation, which would be handled separately. But it's a good point. It doesn't give us all assuming powers to do what we want. We still have to respect the conditions of the site. Thank you.
Thank you for that comprehensive response, Jonathan. I can't see that anyone else
Can I come
You
back?
want to come back in, don't you?
So as I say, in terms of issues around health and safety on this particular issue, and I know it doesn't happen that much, but it does. Can we expect a policy to cover and a process that covers all those issues?
So I don't believe it would be a council function. It's not a council function, but we will just get confirmation of that from the monitoring officer.
Thank you.
Kelly, please.
Thank you. All departments will have relevant policies and risk assessments in place when they're doing these. They wouldn't necessarily be a council function, so it wouldn't come here for approval. And in many cases, they'd be very operational. They wouldn't even go to Cabinet for approval. I'm sure Janine and Jonathan, if needed, could provide you with any risk assessments for any visits they've undertaken.
Thank you for that reassurance. Janine, you wanted to come in.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think one thing that we should say is that it is, if the officer does arrive at a site and he or she determines they don't feel safe, then they don't enter a building or they don't enter a site. Now, what we say is that this allows us to enter, but we always say to officers that you need to do a dynamic risk assessment when you arrive there. Whether you feel it's safe to enter to do so. So as well as all the belt and braces of the health and safety, the PPE, any training that's required, when you arrive on site, for instance, when we were making site visits to the Maestig Town Hall while it was under construction, we had to go to the site office of the contractor, we had to have the PPE in, we had to sign in, we had to do a safety briefing, then we were accompanied onto the site. So we absolutely, the most important overriding feature is health and safety. What we always say to our staff is, even after all those things, if you get to site and you feel that it's not safe for you to proceed, then you don't. It's a dynamic risk assessment at that time. So hopefully that'll provide some reassurances to you, Councillor.
It does provide reassurance. Thank you for that, Janine. I can't see that there are any other questions of contributors. So we have the recommendations before you. Do we have a mover?
I move.
Do we have a second of the recommendation?
I'll second.
Is everyone in agreement? Okay, thank you. And thank you, colleagues from planning, for your attendance here today. Okay, so the next report we have on the agenda is the Revenue Budget Outturn Report 2024 to 2025, and I will now ask the Chief Officer for Finance, Housing and Change to present the report. And just for the minutes, I can see that Councillor Bletson and Councillor Bletson are leaving the meeting. Thank you for your attendance. Caris, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just to confirm for the recording that I'm Caris Lord, I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Housing and Change. So the purpose of this report is to provide Council with an update on the Council's revenue financial position for the financial year ended the 31st of March 2025. In February 2024, Council approved a net revenue budget for the financial year 24-25 of £359.7 million. Due to a technical adjustment in the final settlement, together with some grants transferring into the settlement, the Council settlement was increased by £946,000, and this was reported to Council on the 13th of March last year. So the revised net revenue budget for the 24-25 year was £360.67 million. Cabinet has received update reports with regards to the budget position on a quarterly basis throughout the year. The 2024-2025 financial year was again complex with regards to managing the overall budget position. I have to say that position is not unique to Bridgend Council, and it was reflected across all Welsh local authorities in the last financial year. In the final quarter of the financial year, a significant number of grants were received from Welsh Government, and there were also other adjustments which have all impacted positively on the final outturn position. The main changes are detailed for you at paragraph 3.1.3 of this afternoon's report. These changes resulted in a change in the financial position between quarter 3 and quarter 4, enabling the Council to earmark some available funding to support residents and services in future years. The final outturn position for last year is shown for you at table 1 in your report. The overall outturn for the last financial year was a net underspend of £300,000. Within the outturn position, Directorate budgets overspent by £2.37 million, whilst council-wide budgets had an underspend of £15.1 million. The table does highlight for members the difference between the Q3 projection and the final financial position. The outturn we're reporting also takes into account the additional council tax income of £611,000, which was collected over budget during the last financial year. The main financial pressures are in the service areas of additional learning needs, home to school transport and social care. The school's additional learning needs budget benefited from additional Welsh Government funding of just over £1 million during Q4. There is increased demand in this service area, and it would have overspent by £1.2 million without the grants that were received. There is continued pressure on the home to school transport budget, despite growth being awarded in the 2024-25 budget setting process. The service had a net overspend of £80,000 last year, which was reduced from the Q3 projections due again to an allocation of £540,000 from Welsh Government grant funding in the final quarter. During 2024-25, social services continued to experience pressure of work to meet statutory duties against a backdrop of an increase in demand in children's social care and an increase in demand for independent residential placements within children's services. Children's services budget overspent by £1.2 million last year. There are also financial pressures within the learning disability and the physical and sensory disability services for adults within that service area. There was a £611,000 over collection of council tax in 2024-25. Within this sum, £547,000 was collected from the premium charge for long-term empty properties, and £163,000 was collected from premiums on second homes. Without this additional funding, the core council tax collected last year fell short of the budgeted income by £99,000. So I'm just emphasising those because they are pressures that remain within our budgets. The report details for you progress made against the savings requirements for the period prior to 2024-2025 and also those identified in the last financial year. And these are detailed for you in section of 3.2 of your report. There is a significant amount of information in the report at section 3.3, which details the position for each main service area. In particular this year, within your report, we've provided more information in relation to the change position between Q3 and Q4 for the reasons I've already outlined above. The report also provides an update with regards to the earmarked reserves that the Council is currently holding. During 2024-25, directorates drew down funding from specific earmarked reserves, and these were reported to Cabinet and the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee through the quarterly monitoring reports. The final drawdown from revenue reserves was £5.4 million, and this is summarised for you in Table 4 of the report. The net underspend position of £13.363 million in the last financial year has enabled new net earmarked reserves of just over £13 million to be created at the year end, together with a transfer of £300,000 into the Council Fund. The most significant new earmarked reserves or addition to reserves was £6.8 million to fund new capital projects, £1.5 million to support change management initiatives, including digital transformation projects as we move forward, £1 million to provide support for behavioural issues in schools, and then £150,000 to provide additional capacity for the planning application function and also £150,000 for youth services. A summary of the movement on revenue reserves is shown for you in Table 5. And a full breakdown of the movements on earmarked reserves as at the 31st of March this year is provided at Appendix 4 of your report. If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to add a few comments to finish my presentation of this report. The end-of-year position at the end of March 2025 was significantly better than was predicted at the end of Q3 due to the grants received from Welsh Government. However, the outturn position does not reflect the significant pressures within the revenue budget in many service areas. When the revenue budget for the current financial year was agreed back in February, £9.4 million was allocated to services to meet recurrent base budget pressures. All services will have to continue to work hard this year to ensure that spending is kept within the allocated budgets. Also, due to the outturn position, the Council has been able to enhance existing and to establish some new earmarked reserves when we closed the accounts for 2024-5. And I outlined some of the key changes a moment ago. As members are aware, this money cannot be used to fund ongoing costs and therefore will need to be spent with the long-term financial position of the Council in mind. So, Mr. Mayor, if I could just bring the Council's attention to the recommendations in section 9 of the report, namely the Council is recommended to note the revenue outturn position for 24-25. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that overview of the report, Carys. Councillor Howell-Williams, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and can I thank Carys and the team for presenting the report and drafting the report. I suppose a year-end report has the benefit of being factual. The beginning of the report, of course, we had to make a lot of assumptions, and I'm still satisfied that those assumptions that we used at the beginning of the report were sound and viable at the time. So I'm aware now that this is going to go to scrutiny again on Monday. So I'm happy to take any questions this afternoon, or we can defer to scrutiny on Monday. So I'm happy to move the report, move the recommendation.
Thank you for that. And do we have a seconder for the...
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. And I'll bring in now members who want to ask questions on this report. And first is Councillor Martin Williams, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I share the comment from our cabinet member that it is actually remarkable to have to hit the numbers as you have, a £300,000 underspend. I think there's too many noughts in this to make it a percentage expressed in percentage terms. So it is an incredible margin to hit on a £360 million budget. But slightly underneath that, we've got a slightly different picture in the council-wide budgets. And there's a 25% underspend in the council-wide budgets, which suggests that it's the council-wide budgets that are actually saving the day and helping us deliver and land on our number. Within that, there's a £5.6 million underspend on capital financing. Could you explain, the cabinet member, I suspect you'll defer to Carys, but could you explain what's driving that 5.5 million underspend? And because my suspicion is that that's due to the slippage in the capital programme that may come back as a pressure in this coming or current year. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Martin Williams. Councillor Howell-Williams, did you want to come in, please? Carys, please. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, and it is an important question because, as you said, Councillor Williams, these figures are so large. There are a number of elements that make up the capital financing, and I think a number of them have come into play during the last financial year. Council will remember that back in October last year, we brought a report which you approved about how we actually accounted for our debt repayments, and we changed the way in which we did it. We are able to do that change within years, so we did it within 24-25, and that accounted for £2 million of those underspend that we're actually reporting today. And there will be some underspends as well in this new financial year, which we've costed into this year's budget. And then the other things will be about interest rates were higher last year than they have been, and because we had money which we were able to invest, our money worked quite hard for us. Therefore, we earned good interest on the money that we had placed out. We are anticipating interest rates to come down. Therefore, unfortunately, we can't automatically factor that into our planning for the current financial year. And the other thing is, and I think you did touch on it, that we had funding within the capital programme, some of which didn't actually materialise during the last financial year. And therefore, although we predicted we might have to borrow, we actually didn't have to borrow at the year end. And therefore, we didn't pay interest on borrowing either at the level that we'd originally anticipated. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Williams.
Thank you for that, Carys. Yeah, thank you. Next, we've got Councillor Winstanley, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. That was very helpful. I want to draw your attention to two areas, and I've got a couple of different questions to ask. So the first is, you mentioned council tax, that the income from council tax on empty homes and second homes was significantly higher than expected. Will that figure go down due to behaviour of people who pay council tax changing their behaviour, selling their homes, selling their second homes, or moving into an empty home? And then the second set of questions I've got is about education in particular. So obviously within the budget, we've seen significant underspend, and some of that is due to staffing vacancies, some of which is being recruited. But I noticed that the education other than at school had an underspend of 97,000 due to staff vacancies. And obviously we want to ensure that all children, whether they're in school or being educated at home, are sufficiently monitored for safety purposes. So therefore, I just wondered if we are recruiting for that role. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Winstanley. Carys, if you could answer the first question, the Corporate Director for Education. You young people in early years can answer the second question. Carys, please.
Yes, thank you very much for that question around the council tax. The introduction of the premiums, we've done it gradually. Last financial year was the first year that we had the premium in place for second homes. I think it's a very interesting question about whether or not it will drive a change in behaviour. Certainly when we introduced the council tax premium on empty homes, that was one of the drivers behind it actually, was to, where we've got long-term empty homes, was to encourage the owners of those homes to bring them back into use. And whether that was to bring them back into use as a landlord or whether to actually no longer own the property and release it back. I think over time, actually, the number of empty properties that we currently have the premiums on has dropped in the couple of years that we've had that empty property premium in place. And it is also encouraging people who maybe had long-term empty properties that were in a state of disrepair to bring those homes back into use. So it is driving a behaviour that we welcome, and it was one of the drivers behind that. The second home empty property premium, it was difficult for us to estimate last year how much money we would get in relation to second home premiums. Whether or not that will change people's practice as much as maybe the long-term empties, we're yet to see really, because we've only had that premium in place for a year. But it is certainly something that we will closely monitor, because the figures that I outlined for you when I introduced the report show you the amount of money actually that we can earn as an income on both of those particular premiums, and we will monitor them to see the impact that they have, both financially but equally as important about bringing homes back into use in the county borough.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive answer, Carys. Next we've got Lindsay, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. For the purpose of the recording, I'm Lindsay Harvey. I'm Corporate Director of Education, Early Years and Young People. Thanks, Councillor Winstanley, first of all, for recognising the really important role that our e-auto services undertake, and also the key role that they are undertaking at the moment with some of the behavioural challenges we're having in schools. Very simple response to this one: yes, we will seek to fill vacancies. They are specialised posts, and obviously we'll seek to have the best candidates in front of our children. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that as well, Lindsay. And next we've got Councillor Penhill Thomas, please.
Diolch, Mr. Mayor, and diolch, Carys, for the report. I hear you loud and clear when you say that the outturn for the last financial year masks the pressures that this authority faces and continues to face. And I think that's a difficult message to get across, perhaps in this chamber, but also more importantly to residents. And I think we'll probably tease that out in scrutiny early next week. Carys, you will know, having been in this type of role for some significant time, that one-year budgets really hampers any authority's ability to plan, to be strategic, to think long-term, to be bold, to be transformational. But members will be aware that the UK government published its comprehensive spending review just a couple of weeks back, with an indicative 3-year budget to 2029 for colleagues over in Welsh Government. So just wondered, have you had any early conversations or undertaken any early thinking about whether that will benefit us here in this authority in order that we can plan more than just the 12 months forward? Because what we've done in my time as a member, and it's no criticism of officers, we've hobbled forward year by year. So having a multi-year settlement will really benefit us.
Thank you for that. Councillor Pennell Thomas. Carys, please.
I think just to support your comment that multi-year settlements would be extremely helpful for all of us, and it would give us a better time period to plan our budget and also to plan the service changes that we need to make as a result of those budget issues. And it's certainly something that I know both at a political and an officer level, there's been a lot of lobbying for a number of years to go back to those multi-year settlements, because it does help us to iron out the financial issues and to plan much better than we can at the moment. We don't have anything coming through yet about what that will mean for Wales. Some of it will depend on how Welsh Government decides to allocate that money once it comes to us. So where the Welsh Government may have indicative budgets, they've still to sort of say to us, if you like, whether or not they will be focusing out in certain areas in the public sector or elsewhere. I think that will probably become clearer as we go through this financial year, particularly as we start looking for our own settlement figures, which are due out later on this year. But I know that, again, the lobbying from both members and from officers will be very strong to try and get that 3-year settlement, if we can, for the coming years. Understanding that years 2 and 3 are always just indicative, but at least they're a good planning mechanism for us all to use. And we'll also look at the outcome of the spending review with regards to what we think we might get as a settlement for next year. But being able to put a figure on that at the current time is probably a bit early in our financial planning.
Thank you very much for that response, Carys. Final 2 speakers on next, the leader and then Councillor Caparros. Leader, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just on that last one, I'm sure we will get to those multi-year settlements. I'm sure we just got to keep lobbying, and we will get there. Welsh Government are listening, I believe. I'll come on to that now in a minute. But first, I want to thank the finance team and all the staff in finance for the great work, because there's a lot of information in here of all the work that goes on. But it's not just the finance team; it's all directorates, so to all directors and directorates. A lot of work taking place, not just the last year, ongoing, to try and bring budgets in online. And even in the difficult areas of social services and well-being, I've got to say congratulations to the direction of travel. Things are beginning to bear fruit with all the great work that's been done there to bring things back in line. Difficult, I know. It might sound strange to me, but praise where praise is due. Things are going in the right direction. Demand is still there, though, and demand is increasing. But thank you to the Welsh Government as well, because the Cabinet Secretary, Jane Bryant, for local government now is in. She gets it. She understands what we're trying to do, not just here, across Wales, and has made 2 visits to this authority over the last year just to look at some projects we're doing and understand what we're trying to do. She does get it. She understands local government. So long may that continue, because the grants that we received, okay, some of them were late last minute, and they have masked some of the sort of underlying pressures, but it has given us that fortunate position this year to have some sort of earmarked reserves. Some of them are going into fund future capital projects, but one of them in particular, and there's been a lot of noise about the cuts to education, but there's £1 million we put into support behavioural issues in schools. So we need to look at the money as a whole and what we're doing with education, as well as yesterday in Cabinet when we approved the over £100 million investment in new facilities. But there's also £150,000 gone into our help out planning service and £150,000 toward our youth services. And that's something in the future we need to look at with youth services, because they were cut many, many years ago as part of our MTFS. And we need to look again at how we invest in our youth services going forward. So thank you to everybody concerned. It's a good report in many ways, but it masks the pressures there. But we are in safe hands. And I would say to Councillor Glatworthy, our newest member, you need to look at all these reports and maybe not make comments about bringing in auditors in 2 years' time, if he was ever lucky to do so, because that's not the real story. The real story is here today in this report. And maybe if you do have any advice, don't wait 2 years. Give that advice now to the finance officers if you think yourself or Reform Limited know any better.
Thank you, Leader. Next, we've got Councillor Caparos, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say thank you again to Caris and her team and all our directors for the hard work they do. I think it's shown here in the results, although difficult times and decisions remain in front of us, the right decisions were made to put us in as best a possible position going forward. And that also includes members of the opposition who have contributed through scrutiny. I think it's been a real One Council approach to make sure that we have made the right decisions for our residents. John has touched on it, but I was quite bemused yesterday to hear the inference that our accounts are not audited and that despite a decade of austerity, there is enough waste there that we needn't raise council tax and we could still maintain public services. I can't find any reference to such pots of money in any reports I've seen in my time here. But I was just wondering if you could clarify the point. Are our accounts indeed audited?
Oh yes, our accounts are audited. And my team will tell you what that feels like. So we are actually submitting the final accounts this week to Audit Wales, and then we will be subject to audit throughout the summer. It's very detailed. They bring in quite a large team and they do go through our accounts in great detail. So yes, they are audited.
Thank you, Carison. These are the final three speakers now on this item. You heard earlier that the report will be considered by the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, so I'm sure there'll be lots more opportunities and questions to discuss it then. Deputy Leaders next, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I thought it might be helpful to members to recognise I've sat here and for many years complained about the grants going into social services and to look at the demand on our services, particularly in children's residential and some of the costs that are incurred. We've been notified by Welsh Government this week that we are going to have an extra £30 million in community provision for social services across Wales. This isn't just a one-off grant. I am pleased to note that Welsh Government are listening to us, and that will be a recurring feature of our budget going forward. So my hat's off to Welsh Government because they are taking note. I think it's also worth noting here in this room the costs of children's provision and the amount of children that we have on our books in social services and the cost of residential placements. The most expensive placement we have at the minute is £12,500 per week. And that is astounding. I think what I would say to you all is I will always choose people over place, whether that's grass cutting, potholes. I will keep children safe because that is my responsibility, and that in this chamber is what we need to continue doing. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Then we've got Councillor Griffiths, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to congratulate actually the officers at doing such a good job of actually getting that extra money in from Welsh Government. Getting money from Welsh Government is never an easy thing, and it's great that we've actually had all of that success. So as a second point, I just wanted to remind everybody that the legal requirement, or in Wales we have a legal requirement for auditing our accounts, and that's why all of the Welsh authorities have to do this by law. But I will also note that in England, that legal requirement is not in place. And when we see all of these huge numbers across England, with councils in huge deficits, many of them have not been audited for 3 or 4 years because that requirement is taken away. So here, auditing and having auditors in every single year is a mandatory legal requirement for us, but not in England. So we don't, in this particular thing, I think we can thank the Welsh Government for making a very sensible approach and keeping that requirement for us to be audited. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Griffiths. And the last contribution then will be from Councillor Haynes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the subject of financial probity and competency in this council, I'd like to remind councillors and point out again to councillors, in Caris's response to Councillor Williams' question on the capital financing, she did mention it, but I think it bears repeating again. The changes that Caris and her team brought to the council in October last year in the reporting of the minimum revenue provision policy. Now, the excellence of that piece of work and the decisions that were made to make that change, we can see an impact of over £2 million. Now, I think that is worthy of note, and I'd like to register my thanks to Caris and her team for their competency and their excellence in our financial management. I think it's worth remembering that, over £2 million, because they've done their job and done their job very well.
I did say I'm not taking anyone else after your contribution, so I'm not, I'm afraid. Apologies, Deputy Mayor, but I did say that would be the end of the contribution, so I'm keeping to my word. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you for reminding me of that, Montronoff. Is everyone in favour of the recommendations?
Aye.
Thank you. Apologies. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to receive the questions as shown on the meeting agenda. And again, just to remind colleagues that this is an opportunity to ask supplementary questions. We don't want long speeches, Councillor Davis. That's not being directly to you, but you are the next person to be invited to ask if you have any supplementary questions on the response that you received from the Cabinet Member for Education and Youth Services.
I do, funnily enough, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I just first of all, I'd just like to thank Councillor Thomas for the fulsome reply. It's really good to hear that this really serious subject is being dealt with in the round, and all the main agencies are involved in dealing with it. My question is, it's good to hear there have been a number of positive outcomes from the more efficient partnership working you've been able to facilitate in respect to this issue. But have there been any other unexpected improvements to local partnership working as a result of this increased cohesion? Can you talk us through any other examples of good practice in Bridgend County? Because too often we hear the phrase, we're learning the lessons after some awful event. So it would be good to hear, as well as the information you provided in the answer, of any other examples of us learning the lessons as we go along by every agency involved in the task force. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Davis. Councillor Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and can I thank Councillor Davis for his question and his supplementary question. I mean, members will reflect and to the occasion where I said in this chamber that there needed to be a political drive to take this forward and to politically support officers in what is a very sensitive, complex and difficult area of business. Can I say from the outset, we have had overwhelming and outstanding support from officers not only within this authority, but from the wider Community Safety Partnership. That is senior officers from South Wales Police, the Health, and our colleagues at Pencoed College. I think testimony to this is the attendance at the meetings that we have held, and testimony to this is the energy that is applied during the discussions. There is a clear appetite in the County Borough of Bridgend to support all schools, to support children, and to support the wider community, basically, in dealing with this particular issues. If I'm going to stay away from the unexpected, because when I'm sitting there listening to these people talk in the task, it's an expectation. The experience is there, the professionalism is there. And what I asked them to do, first and foremost, was, is our current policy, procedure and processes match fit for what we're having what we are confronted with in our schools? So that was the first thing we done. And straight away they identified within the instance response groups that have been set up, there was a little bit of a delay in information sharing, for example, and just to put some context on this, when a child or young person is actually arrested by the police for having been found in a weapon, then there is this investigation process, and there was a delay in feeding that information back expeditiously and quickly to schools, so schools could risk assess why that child was in possession of that weapon. So they could look at potential bullying, they could look at potential causation. And I think the speed in which the police have taken the lead on this is very, very commendable. We've also asking ourselves why in Bridgend we had these high number of incidents, and there is an academic research opportunity available for us. It will come at some cost, but that is then perhaps applying somebody else to come in, have a look to see what the causation is, to give us some ideas so that we can then apply those ideas yet again to the current processes that are running. There are still lots to do. I want to thank those parents for making personal contact with myself to express their concern, and I have to say the conversations I've had with them have been very healthy. And my appeal is to the chamber here: if any member has a particular idea which perhaps we can look at, then please get in touch, and I will ensure that that idea will be taken forward with the task group. But thanks very much for your question, Councillor Davies. Still lots to do, but we're continuing focused to address those issues. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Councillor Jones, for that helpful and comprehensive response. The next question that we have before us is from Councillor Martin Williams. Do you have a supplementary question, please?
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Councillor Jones. I'd like to ask Councillor Jones a question. It was a really comprehensive reply, and probably more comprehensive than I was expecting. It did exceed what I thought we might have. But on the fourth bullet point down, it kind of relates to this a little bit. It talks about a head teacher being talking about those in exam years or entering exam years facing the most pressure. It's come to my attention from residents in my ward that there is a disconnect between and Lindsay's nodding because he knows, there's a disconnect between the subjects that those in St Clair's have been able to take, so single sciences, for example, and no obligation to undertake Welsh language GCSEs. And those who might find themselves now in our schools will be obliged to undertake those. And obviously that will bring anxiety, and they'll need support in a time when support is sadly, resources are perhaps shrinking. Could you undertake to look into that and see that is, if there is an alternative, my understanding, for example, is, and it's anecdotal, that someone hasn't done Welsh all the way through comprehensive school. They're about to enter in the old money, 5th year 11, and they'll be obliged to undertake an exam, which will cause them huge anxiety. So could someone have a look into that and provide some support and guidance as how we can manage our response and our support to that? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. Councillor Jones, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Williams, for your question, because it's very, very appropriate to ask the question about this dreadful situation which children and families who use that school find themselves in. I mean, as we put in the written response to you, disappointingly, we were not given the heads up by the company themselves. We found out about the proposed closure from actually families themselves and parents of children there. But I'd like to think we've acted very swiftly. A group manager is in regular contact with the head teacher at Porthcawl to look at resettlement options for the children and the families who have applied to Bridgend Council for educational needs. And only last week, the director and I, and Councillor Pratt as well, who was, in fairness, has been taking the lead for local families in Porthcawl, we met two trustees from a group of people then who are looking to take on St Clair's in a different scheme. And yes, the issues that you've raised were actually raised on there. So I'm not going to sit here and try and pretend that I know the answer to that, because there's a gentleman sitting in front of me who has far more knowledge of syllabus, curriculum, and the difficulties now we will have when we make when we get somebody who's transcending from an independent private school to a state school, because there is that difference. So I could ask Mr. Harvey, please, to come in.
Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, a big thank you to Councillor Williams for this question. It's a really important one, because discussing this matter, obviously, with the parents and pupils of St Clair's. This is a really anxious time for them, and obviously, from the local authorities' point of view, we're keen to support the parents, the families, and the pupils at the school. Councillor Williams raises a really important point with regard to some of the challenges with regard to curriculum and qualifications in the two settings. So if I give you some sort of context, really, Councillor Williams is absolutely right. There's a different curriculum with regard to science and how that's implemented at Key Stage 4. And also, for example, Spanish, when we see that a number of pupils at St Clair's have opted for Spanish, and the school that most of them seem to be applying for, Porthcawl, does not offer Spanish as a subject. So again, that is a challenge. Also is a challenge, of course, when we see Porthcawl, a particularly good school, Porthcawl Comprehensive School, that's approaching capacity in some of its year groups as well. The one thing I will say, and I think is enormous credit to Mike Stevens and the staff at Porthcawl Comprehensive School. I know we've got governors present here today. They've been outstanding. As you can see in the response, they've been really proactive in looking at this. One of the key elements that Councillor Williams has identified, again, is of concern. It talks about the three subjects of science, physics, chemistry and biology being taught at GCSE level. They're offered at a single subject level in St Clair's and triple science in Porthcawl. So again, I've discussed this with the head teacher. They are doing everything possible to try and accommodate the needs of learners. And through you, Mr Mayor, I'd be more than happy when I receive additional information with regard to this matter from the school. I'd be more than happy to brief members. But again, thank you, Councillor Williams, for a very important question.
We'd welcome that. Thank you for that additional information. I'm sure we'll make sure that members are updated on developments. The next question, the final question on today's agenda, is from Councillor Thomas. You've all received the response from the Cabinet Member for Regeneration, Economic Development and Housing. Do you have a supplementary
Leader.
Question, please, Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I do have a supplementary. My first question, there was some statistical information in the reply, but feedback I've had from members of the public and colleagues in this chamber suggests that many designated areas have not benefited from Section 106 money, and that is in excess of some of the time periods that I requested. I can give examples across the county borough, including in my own ward. So given these widespread concerns, I'm just wondering, will Cabinet Member for Regeneration commit to a full review and audit to give greater clarity on this area? And could this review be open to scrutiny on a timely basis, please?
Thank you for that supplementary question. Cabinet Member, please.
Thank you for the question. I'm sure we can work with officers to do a review, and I think if we can, I'm sure we can arrange something, Janine, to look at the Section 106 money, because I think what the answers you've had, Councillor Thomas, is that we've met all the criteria. Janine?
I'll bring the Corporate Director for Communities in. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think the question that was posed, Councillor Thomas, hopefully we've answered that, the question you posed to us. With regard to the comment about residents have said there's areas that Section 106 is not complete, well, I would need to know the detail of that before I could comment any further. What we do is we have regular reviews of our Section 106 agreements. They are very detailed legal agreements when planning applications come through and can only be spent in a particular way. So just because money comes into the borough, it doesn't mean that we can spend it in areas outside of that legal agreement. And we are held to that, unfortunately. Sometimes the perception is the money comes in and can be spent in a different manner, and that's not the case. There is a little bit of good news as well. I could announce this afternoon. We have now appointed an officer, a dedicated officer for Section 106 work. We did have an officer some time ago, but we lost them due to budget reasons about 8 or 9 years ago. So we have now had some money released, and we've appointed an officer, and we're going to appoint an assistant. And what we want to work on, which I think was something that will really help you, is we want to work on an annual plan, an annual infrastructure plan, And we want to bring that to this council. And what that will do is it'll show you what 106 have been agreed during the year and where we intend to spend that money going forward. Now, that's something we haven't been able to do previously. And I'm hoping that when this new officer starts the role, we'll be able to produce that plan and that you as a council will get more visibility on the Section 106 spend, the areas that have been improved going forward. So I'm not sure whether a scrutiny session would assist at this stage, but what I would say, as soon as the officer is in post, the first thing we'll be asking them to do is to put this plan together, and if we can get you a version of that plan to council in the autumn, I think that would be a really good start for us to start to understand more details surrounding the 106. I think what's really important to note is that our new LDP has circa £116 million of Section 106 monies potentially involved in some of the developments there. So awful lot will be coming through in the future, and important for you as members have sight of where that money is when we negotiate the developments and the timescale for implementing. So hopefully that has answered some of that supplementary question.
Comprehensive. Thank you for that, Janine. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a notice of motion proposed by Councillor Blundell, please. So before we begin this item, do I have a seconder for this notice of motion, please? In favour? Yeah, so we'll hear the motion then. Councillor Blundell, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the motion standing in my name regarding the Employment Rights Bill of 2024, a piece of legislation that I believe represents the most significant upgrade to workers' rights in a generation. Don't worry, Mr. Mayor, I won't be summoning the ghosts of Thatcher and Scargill, but I believe this is an important issue that we as councillors should support. For far too long, too many people in Bridgend and across the UK have faced insecurity in the workplace, whether it's 0 hours contract, uncertain paternity rights, or fear of unfair dismissal. Working people have been asked to carry the burden of a system that hasn't kept pace with modern life. But now we have a chance to back real change. This bill seeks to ban exploitative 0 hours contracts by giving workers a right to guaranteed hours, giving families the stability they need to plan their lives with confidence. It seeks to end the disgraceful practice of fire and rehire, which has seen loyal employees forced to accept worse conditions or face the sack. This bill will make those tactics automatically unfair. That's not just a fair industrial practice, that's basic decency. The bill gives the people the right to protection from unfair dismissal from day one. It ensures that new dads can access paternity leave from the first day on the job, a small but powerful change that supports modern families. It introduces a new right to unpaid bereavement leave, because recognising that people need time, space and dignity to grieve without fearing for their livelihoods. And crucially, it strengthens employers' responsibilities to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace, because every employee has a right to be safe and respected at work. It will also improve access to statutory sick pay, scrapping unfair thresholds that exclude the lowest paid, and ending the 3-day waiting period, because sickness shouldn't mean choosing between your health and your income. Colleagues, this is not an exhaustive list, but it reflects a fundamental shift in how we value and support working people. This is a bill that boosts productivity, raising living standards, and builds a fairer economy for all. And let me be clear, this bill will make a tangible difference to the people of Bridgend. It means more secure jobs, fairer treatment, stronger protections. It means that our residents, whether they work in care, retail, construction, or public service, will feel that the system finally is on their side. This council should be clear in its support. That's why this motion resolves that we write to the UK Government on behalf of Bridgend residents to express our backing for the Employment Rights Bill 2024 and the principles it stands for. Because when we stand up for workers, we stand up for families, we stand up for fairness, and we stand up for Bridgend. I commend this motion to the council. Thank you.
Point of order, Chair.
Right. So we've got a point of order, so I will hear the point of order from Councillor
Chair, under the Council Procedure Rules concerning the accuracy, impartiality and appropriateness of motions presented to this chamber, the motion claims the bill will significantly improve the lives of Bridgend residents and represents the biggest upgrade in employment rights in a generation. Yet this is a political opinion, not an objective fact. It assumes a consensus that simply doesn't exist, either in this chamber or nationally. And I would respectfully argue that this motion...
Wait. Quiet, please. The Mayor's going to speak. Wait. Sorry. I've just confirmed with the monitoring officer whether it's a point of order or not before you continue. Thank you for your contribution. We're going to wait. The monitoring officer's going to check, and then I will inform you. Right. So it is not a point of order. If you would like to speak in the debate, right, everyone, if you'd like to speak in the debate, Councillor Clapworthy, you'd be very welcome to. Please raise your hand, and I'll bring you in turn. Okay. So, Deputy Leader, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for bringing this motion to the chambers. Everybody will be aware that I am trade union made politician. And from my reading of the current position, many of the proposed changes to improve the rights of workers we're very relaxed about. Our biggest challenges will be managing the change and implications of the change if and when new negotiating bodies are introduced and the pay terms and conditions of relevant staff move into these bodies. But given the bill itself is looking primarily at the bodies in England only, this doesn't present any immediate concerns for us. Once Wales decides to initiate conversations regarding negotiating bodies in Wales and brings forward proposals or legislation in that regard, we will need to look at that detail, including the scope to assess the impact and the implications. Key provisions of the bill cover updating and enhancing existing employment rights and making provision for new rights, making provision regarding pay and conditions in particular sectors, and making reforms in relation to trade union matters and industrial action. It further creates new mechanisms for the enforcement of employment law. This bill proposes fair pay agreements to set minimum pay and conditions for sectors, including our social care workforce, something that we value particularly highly here in Wales, and it includes measures to enhance job security and rights for low-paid workers. This includes the establishment of an adult social care negotiating body, the remit of which was originally confined to England, but following representations made by WLGA spokespersons, of which I am one, this bill has now been amended and confers powers to Wales to establish a social care negotiating body which would cover both adults and children's services here in Wales. That is not the case in England. They will only be covering adults. The legislative consent for the bill is to be debated in the Senedd on the 15th of July. If it passes, Welsh Government will then start discussions about what the negotiating body will look like and who will sit on it. So I am really hopeful that this progresses and moves swiftly, and I will look forward to royal assent to be forthcoming. Thank you very much.
Deputy Leader, next we've got Councillor Griffiths, please. Councillor Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and perhaps my comments can actually answer some of Councillor Clatworthy's comments a little bit earlier, which is why is this actually relevant for us as an authority? I think an initial reaction might be, well, it's going to increase our costs of provision of services, but I'm pleased to say that our employees and even our contracted employees probably won't be affected by this type of legislation because we're already providing good wages and conditions that are above those that are included in this bill as a local authority. However, what we have to recognise is that the predatory nature of many organisations to their employees means that they provide their employees with very insecure work. And for all the reasons that Councillor Blundell has already mentioned, that means it actually pushes down wages, or at least pushes down earnings for families, and makes families very insecure in their employment. And we all know that one of the major causes of family breakup is actually financial strain and financial tension within the family. And who picks up the bill when families fall apart or when people actually lose their home because they can't pay rent? Of course, that's us as a local council. So what I would actually put it to this council is this is actually a very relevant bill for us to discuss and to welcome, because this will raise the overall salaried income for families within Bridgend. And I would also make a secondary point, of course, which is when wages actually fall, it means that our residents actually pay less council tax because they get exempted if their wages fall below a certain level. So this actually impacts our revenue, but it also impacts the services that we have to offer to both families and also children, and also dealing with the breakup of families. So I wholeheartedly welcome this bill, and I think it will make a very substantial difference to us as an authority, with helping us deal with the poverty that actually has been increasing over the last 10 years due to the very poor work conditions, and especially the zero-hour contracts, which are actually now prevalent. And I'll be very pleased to see the end of those across the UK. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Next, we've got Councillor Penhill-Thomas, please.
Diolch, Mr. Mayor. I'm finding it very difficult to have a row with what's in front of me this evening, or with any of the comments made by previous speakers. What I would say is that I hope that the UK government is very much in listening mode. Agree with the essence of the motion in front of me. But listening mode in so much as listening to employers. CIPD has carried out a survey that says 79% of employers expect increased costs due to measures in the Employment Rights Bill, possibly reducing staff, automating processes and cutting training budgets. Now, I know this conversation was had at the time of the introduction of the national minimum wage, and that didn't come to anything. So I really hope that that's very much the case with this. But government must be alive to these concerns and ensure that any unintended consequences are accounted for and mitigated through a clear implementation plan. Given that the bill is making its way through UK Parliament and is virtually guaranteed assent, I think what may have been more timely this afternoon is a discussion around how changes to disability welfare in particular will impact residents across Bridgend, and the very brave decision by 120 Labour MPs to propose a fundamental but reasoned amendment to that. And I really hope that gets a good airing in the coming days. But I support the motion in front of members today.
Thank you, Councillor Penhill-Thomas. Next, we've got Councillor Caparis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a trade unionist, I can tell you that this isn't a political opinion, whether this is a significant change in the generation for employment rights. This absolutely is a fundamental restoration of workers' rights that is long, long overdue. I represent over 3,000 people in 60 different employers. Shaking his head, I do. I can tell you some absolute horror stories in the world of work. I can tell you of a person who phoned in sick and then was told, if you don't come into work, not only will we not pay you, but we'll take your last month's wages off you. Of a highly skilled technical person who was told, starting tomorrow, you're on the pick and shovel for 2 months, and if you don't like it, you can look for a job elsewhere. I can tell you many horror stories. Those two were just calls I had this morning of people. There are many employers, good employers, who don't treat their staff so terribly. So this is a fundamental shift that will help two groups of people. Those who currently have to wait 2 years to get their most basic rights, not to be unfairly dismissed. I've seen cases where people are brought in to a dismissal meeting, not even knowing what the charges are, being refused to see the evidence that's going to be used against them, and without the right to challenge it in an employment tribunal. The bringing back of day one rights is going to absolutely fundamentally shift the relationship between the employer and the employee back to a position of fairness. It's also going to shift the competition between employers who do exploit their staff and the many majority decent employers who don't. So I think this is an opportunity for everyone here, particularly from my colleague at the back, who like to say that they're here standing up for the working man. You can prove it today by voting for this motion.
Councillor Winstanley is next, please.
Thank you. I just want to say that I really appreciate the improved access to statutory sick pay by removing the lower earnings limit and the 3-day waiting limit, because that I know will make a difference to people in this borough who currently do not get sick pay when they are ill. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Winstanley. Next, we've got Councillor Martin Williams, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know whether it's political or not. It feels a little bit performative, but I'm a little, I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Penhill Thomas. For me, it's going to be deciding in another place, 2 places above us. What we say today, whilst is important, and whilst I welcome the bill in its broadest sense, doesn't really make any difference to what happens there. My question to inform my decision today of how I will vote is to whichever cabinet member who's responsible for this. I get confused sometimes by the portfolios, but Councillor Griffiths said that this won't cost us any more because we're already at or above the standards that this bill will mandate. Could someone please confirm that this bill will not cost this council any more than they currently expends on employers? Otherwise we may be supporting something we don't fully understand.
I'll bring the Deputy Leader in now, please.
I can assure you, in its current format, it won't cost us any more money. All our terms and conditions are such that we already meet pieces of legislation. What I wouldn't be able to assure you of is any amendments that will take place following this date. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Next, we've got Councillor Martin Hughes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really do welcome this bill. I think looking at it from a number of aspects, but perhaps to home in specifically on the parental rights, where there will no longer be a qualification period of 12 months. It'll be from day one that those rights will apply. Now, if you look around Bridgend County, like the rest of the UK, what we have is a different employment landscape. There's a tendency now for people not to stay in employment for years and years, but actually to move and to change. And also the profile of employment in our area is becoming increasingly younger, and so this really does impact on young families. So in saying that, I really welcome this as a positive move for everybody in the county.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Next is Councillor Pratt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I suppose it is what it is. There is a bill that's gone through Parliament. It's currently sitting in the House of Lords, as my understanding. I'm neither a Lord or an MP, so I'm thankfully not having to debate this. Like of any bill of this complexity, there will be things that people agree with and people disagree with. The one thing I'm particularly pleased with is maritime changes made the Red Duster fly high as a proud example of standards across the world in the maritime sector. However, I don't see the purpose of this motion. There was a general election last year. Labour won that election by a majority. It's why this bill has gone through. I'm sure our residents are well aware, and our MP is informing us quite well of what is going on within Parliament. I suppose my question is, are we expecting a response, and how will our residents be informed via this council of what the response will be of UK government, or is this going to be a cursory letter sent which will sit on a desk and not be responded to? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Brad. I will invite Councillor Blundell to respond to that point later in the debate. I can see that Councillor Davis has now indicated. I'm not taking any more speakers because I'm very mindful we've got another motion to discuss, and I want to give that some time, and we're already eaten into most of the time allotted for motions. So Councillor Jenkins was up and then he's reappeared, so I'll have to take Councillor Jenkins as well. But I will not be taking anyone else, okay? So, Councillor Timothy Thomas, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Blundell, for the motion. I think, by and large, I support the provisions within the bill. In principle, I support the motion. I would like to raise a question whether it's particularly pragmatic and what's it going to achieve, however. And I'll investigate that in a moment. But I think generally, in my experience, when you exclude the particularly unscrupulous businesses, I find that most businesses that I engage with want to do the right thing. They want to do the right thing and be compliant. And I think that's especially the case because within the provisions of the bill, there are some quite serious financial implications and I think criminal proceedings as well. So this is especially being compliant with legislation is particularly challenging for small and medium enterprises. Bear in mind, Mr. Mayor, they may not have legal departments, they may not have compliance departments, and also small and medium enterprises already have to comply with challenging legislation, including existing employment law, health and safety, and taxation law. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to call an amendment. And once the bill is given royal assent and has the competency for Wales, I believe that this authority should engage with local businesses and signpost them to relevant guidance to make sure that local businesses in the county borough do not get these unnecessary sanctions. So those businesses that want to do the right thing but may not be aware of the provisions. Because fundamentally, Mr. Mayor, I believe in education and prevention. Thank you.
Yes, could you, just for the record, if you could confirm, clarify the amendment, and then I'll take a seconder, if there is a seconder for that, a proposed amendment to the motion, please.
Yeah, to clarify, Mr. Mayor, the amendment is basically that once the bill has has been given royal assent and has the competence in Wales, crikey. Sorry about that. Once the bill has passed royal assent and has the competency to be legislation in Wales, that we signpost businesses to the relevant guidance in a cost-effective and appropriate method to make sure that those businesses that want to do the right thing avoid unnecessary sanctions.
I'm just consulting with the monitoring officer about our powers to offer that, because I wouldn't want a motion put before the council when we haven't necessarily got the powers and the capacity. So I will ask the monitoring officer to advise on that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Thomas, can you just be clear? What is the wording you want to propose? So in practical terms, what are you asking this council to do?
Say again, sorry, Matt. Yeah, that's good. Provide support and guidance to local businesses. So that could be
which we do already.
Well, how could we support guidance for a bit of legislation that's not in that's not legislation?
Well, it would just be an extension of what we already to provide to businesses. We already support and guide them, but it's a matter for members. Is there a seconder to that amendment?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Can I just be clear? We're talking about signposting, not giving advice and guidance, because we're not in we're not in the position to provide advice and guidance to other organisations about working rights.
So, Mr. Mayor, obviously, as part of the commencement period, that's the civil servants will be getting the provisions of the bill in place. No doubt they'll be providing some sort of guidance, basically just saying that'll be from the UK government and that we signpost that guidance in an appropriate manner. Be that social media or any other business networks that we have. I'm not aware of all the full business networks that we have.
Yeah. We do it anyway when it's within our remit. That's the monitoring officer. I'm sure the corporate director of communities can confirm that. Just the current position, Janine, around signposting for businesses, because that would be within your teams, wouldn't it? That service.
Yeah. Absolutely, we would. We can't impact on this ourselves, obviously, but what we could do is put out some comms to say about it and direct them to government websites where the information might be in place, Leader.
Right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, right. Okay, so first of all, I will go to the councillor that moved the motion. Do you accept the proposed amendment to the motion, please, Councillor Blundell?
Hang on, I'm getting about 7 different people telling me 7 different answers here. As we already... Can I finish? Thank you. As it's work we already do, and work that already in our remit, I am sort of happy to accept some part of the recommendation because it is work we already do, and just to meet if the motion will then will pass with consent from the opposition, that would be fine with me.
Does the seconder the seconder of the original motion?
You second it.
Yeah, are you happy with the proposed amendment? You are. Thank you, Councillor Granville. All in favour of the amendment? All right.
So now
No.
the rest of the debate is now the motion with the amendment. People who spoke.
Yes. No. There was one person not in favour of the motion. No? There's two members that are not in favour. I hear that correct of the amendment. Councillor Pratt and Councillor Clapp.
If I could just clarify, what you decided on here is just the amendment. So the people who are not in favour, you're not in favour of the amendment. This isn't a substantive motion. It is just the amendment. Not in favour? Not in favour of the amendment. We'll have to have a vote then to see if the amendment carries, and then you can get back to debating the motion. We're going to try the ModGov voting system. So I'm going to pass over to Rachel, who will expertly lead you through it.
Thank you, Kelly.
Right. Yes. Right. Calm down, everyone. Don't get too excited. It's only a vote. Right. Rachel will now explain to you, and listen very carefully. She will say this only once, about how you can vote in the motion. Rachel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have got two members who've actually had technical difficulties with the ModGov this evening, so I'm going to go to them first and do a verbal vote while other members try to log in if it has logged them out, for example, and get ready for the vote. I've also got another member who might be. Can I confirm Councillor Collins' verbal vote? Yep, okay, no problem. That's 3. Councillor Maxine Lewis? Yep, okay.
We've also got Councillor Martin Jones. Is there anyone else who is Councillor Tim
Thomas?
Thomas?
Log in, can you?
Councillor Tim Thomas. Right. Right. Councillor Jenkins as well.
Okay.
Is there anyone else that wants to? Is there anyone else that needs to vote verbally because they are experiencing technical problems? So, Councillor John as well, and that is it. Now we will receive the votes once we've had further technical problems addressed. Please bear with us.
Okay, so on the home screen, you need to scroll down to find the item that we're debating.
You scroll down.
You've got the arrow. Okay, and then if you click on that one, it'll say for the amendment.
So just to confirm, the vote isn't open at the moment. I'm just going to go to the verbal vote and then the vote will open. You'll see it highlighted blue for all other members on the ModGov system, and when it does go blue after the verbal vote, that is when you can vote. Can I confirm, if you verbally vote, please do not go into the system and then vote, or that would carry a double vote. So I am going to go to the verbal votes, please. Can I go to Councillor Nora Clark, please? It's for or against the amendment?
For, Rachel, please.
Thank you. Councillor Owen Clatworthy?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Collins?
For the amendment.
For the amendment, thank you. I've got Councillor Maxine Lewis?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Jones?
For the amendment.
Thank you. And Councillor Jenkins, please. Councillor Phil Jenkins. For or against the amendment, please?
I'm for.
Sorry. Thank you.
For.
And finally, Councillor Melanie Evans, I believe.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel, for the amendment, please.
Yeah.
And another one. Sorry,
yes,
just been
I know, I
advised,
can
Councillor
see, and Councillor Mark John.
Councillor Mark John, thank you.
For.
Mark John. And Councillor Tim Thomas?
Yeah.
For
Oh,
the
can you
amendment.
use your mic only because people online can't use? So, Councillor Tim Thomas was for the amendment, right?
Thank you.
Right.
Sorry,
yes,
Councillor
I can't.
Heidi
There's
Bennett.
3 people in my right. Councillor Bennett, please.
Apologies, my screen is saying the vote has not yet started. I have refreshed it.
No, it hasn't started. As I said,
okay.
It hasn't started yet in terms of the ModGov vote. I'm just doing the verbal vote and then we'll go to the online vote. So please bear with me. So is that everyone verbally? Thank you. Okay, if there's anyone afterwards who's experienced an issue with the ModGov vote, I can always take their vote straight after. Thank you. I will hand over to Oscar, who will display the vote and put it live. You'll see it highlight blue, and then if you just vote for the amendment, against the amendment, or abstain, please. And we'll allow quite a bit of time for this. Thank you.
1 second. You raising your hand to speak, Councillor Granville?
Councillor Granville, can I take your verbal vote then, please? For the amendment? Thank you. Vote is now live. If everyone could go into ModGov and place their vote, please. For those who haven't already verbally voted. Thank you.
Is there anyone experiencing any technical problems on the voting of the digital nature? There's plenty of people experiencing technical problems here. Anyone experiencing technical problems with the voting, please indicate now. No? So is everyone who is due to vote online voted online? Everyone voted online? We are just checking the votes for colleagues online. And we will announce the result shortly. I don't think it'll be any surprise, but we will announce the result shortly. Okay, we're now going to close the vote. It appears that everyone has voted either online or verbally. Everyone who's voted who's present at the meeting. So I think you can see the outcome of the vote, and the motion was carried. The amendment was carried. Just checking you were listening.
This is the online vote that you see there, plus the verbal vote, so I can confirm it's definitely carried. Thank you.
Definitely carried. Okay. So now we can return to the debate, please, on the motion with the amendments. And I did say, I apologise to everyone, but I did say that I would stop after Councillor Jenkins, so I am going to stop after Councillor Jenkins, because we do have another motion to address, and I want to give that some time at least, and we are running out of time. So, Councillor Thomas, you've spoken, so I will now bring in Councillor Aspie, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, obviously I'm supportive of the motion. One question I wanted to ask, because this practice, and it's one of my pet hates, is 0 hours contracts. It was occurring during Mel Knott's administration between 2012 and 2017 and continued into your administration between 2017 and 2022. Could you tell me today, are there any employees currently employed under 0 hours contracts, or have you actually outlawed it?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Aspie. I will ask the Chief Officer for HR to respond to that. She's best placed to. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We don't have employees on what are classed as 0 hour contracts. We do have casual workers. So, for example, in the Registrar's office, we have casual workers there. It's mainly to suit their needs, so they may not want set hours every week, so they work as and when they want to work. So, in answer to the question, we don't have contracts termed 0 hours, but we do have casual contracts where the employee can choose not to take any hours if it's not suitable to them in that week or month.
Thank you for that, Kelly. And indeed, that has always been the case. There are other examples, for example, exam invigilators that certainly do not want set and fixed hours. So it is in the interests and to the benefit of the employees. So next we've got Councillor Evans, please. Councillor Mel Evans.
Thank you, and I am fully for this motion with the amendment. And can I just say I welcome the Employment Rights Bill, as this will ensure workers will get fair pay for a fair day's work. It'll strengthen statutory sick pay and, more importantly, prioritise fairness, equality and well-being of workers, of which I believe to be fundamental to both employees and employers. And that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Evans. The last contribution now, because I did say it would be the last contribution, is from Councillor Phil Jenkins, whose hand has dropped, but I will take you as you had indicated earlier that you wanted to speak.
Can I go ahead now?
Please do.
Thank you very much.
Very welcome.
Well, it goes without saying, I've listened to obviously debate, and I'm at a loss really as why we should be showing our support for it at the moment, because I think it will be law, and I listened to the impassionate pleas by our ex-trade unionists and trade unionists, etc. And I don't think that none of us would really object to this motion. So my only concern is now, I hope this council gives equal weight to a full debate of a kind, whatever the outcome may be, to write to a government, whichever way we see fit, this council. I can't predetermine how it will vote, but there are planned cuts to welfare benefits, and particularly those in the disability section as well, should be debated, and this council must give equal weight to that, as a large majority of our community will be affected by the planned reforms that are being planned by our government at the moment. So I would like that to be noted, and at some time we take notice of that and decide what this council would like to do as regards to writing to the government on those cuts.
Thank you for that, Councillor Jenkins. That was the last person member. No, I did say, I told you earlier, we're running out of time. That's it. I will bring the person that... Yeah, let me finish. I was going to bring Councillor Blundell in. I wasn't going to bring any additional members in, and members were indicating to me across the floor that they'd like to come in. I said they couldn't, so they're not. I'll bring Councillor Blundell in to close the motion, debate on the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for all those who took part in the debate today. I think we've heard some impassioned pleas by certain members who have lived experience of what this would mean if this does get royal assent once it passes through the other house in Westminster. There was really only one question I think that was posed to me personally of how we would let residents know if we do get a response from Westminster Government. And I was going to check with the monitoring officer, although I haven't checked with her just yet, and I'm doing it right now. If we do get a response, that we can add it to our agenda for noting as something that we've received as a correspondence in response to our motion.
Yes, we can either bring it for noting or we can circulate it to all members. We are actually looking at a process for identifying the relevant officer who will be drafting the letters on behalf of whichever cabinet member is going to be sending the letters, and then how to deal with responses that come back.
Fabulous, thank you. And on that note then, let's get the voting started then, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We will now move to the vote. All in favour?
No.
In which case, we will now move to the voting again, and we will now take, first of all, the verbal votes. So if we are ready, I will ask the Democratic Services Manager to read out the names and please cast your votes. Rachel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Nora Clark, please, for or against the motion?
For Rachel, please.
Thank you. Councillor Owen Clatworthy?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Collins?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Melanie Evans?
For Rachel, please.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Granville?
For, please, Rachel.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Jenkins?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mark John?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Jones?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Maxine Lewis?
For.
And Councillor Tim Thomas?
For.
Sorry, was that for?
It was a 4.
Thank you. And now I will hand over to Oscar, who will open the Mordga vote. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, based on the online vote and the verbal vote, the motion is carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. The motion is carried. Unfortunately, because we've spent such a long time on that motion, we've run out of time to discuss the second motion. So I am going to ask the proposer of the second motion, Councillor Williams, if he's prepared for that to be deferred to the next meeting. Or, of course, we can debate it, but it would have to be in a very short space of time now. So, Councillor Williams, what's your preference, please?
Mr. Mayor, I'm very happy for it to be deferred if you think it needs a big airing, or you could just vote on it as it stands, but it's up to you.
I'm just trying to check if there would be support for that motion. I'm looking to you, Leader. So turn your microphone on, please. And
yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it could be a straightforward vote. There may be an amendment. I'm not sure, but it doesn't need much debate. I suppose it could be done relatively straightforward.
Councillor Pratt, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. No, just an observation. I understand and I appreciate where Councillor Williams is coming from, just going straight to the vote. I think it would be helpful if we had a statement from the leader of where we are with grass cutting, which of course would assist with whether we want to bring town and community councils into grass cutting facilities. Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Brown. You may have missed it, but he did give a comprehensive update in his leaders report. It was earlier in the meeting. Is it possible for you to
Williams needs to present his motion. Should we like to start in it or we're not starting it, basically?
Okay. Well, we'll start the motion, but what I don't know, the difficulty is, so I will bring in Councillor Griffiths, who I understand may be making an amendment, and we can need to understand the amendment, but
I'd be very happy to defer, Mr. Mayor, if it makes life easier.
Is all happy with deferment of the motion? In which case, we will defer the motion.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I
just
make one comment? I'm happy for it to be deferred, but I wouldn't like the grass to grow under our feet.
I shouldn't have viewed that. Thank you, Councillor Easterbrook. Right. We will defer the motion. Unfortunately, it is not the end of the meeting. We've not received any urgent items for today's meeting. However, we have got a section of the meeting where there is a proposal to exclude the public, and that is on the approval of minutes. And the minutes relating to the following items are not for publication, as they contain exempt information as defined in paragraphs 12 and 13 of Part 4 and paragraph 21 of Part 5 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Wales Order 2007, apparently. If following the application of the public interest test that the panel resolves, the meeting resolves, pursuant to the Act to consider this item in private, the public will be excluded from the meeting during such consideration. I will now ask the monitoring officer to apply the public interest test for this item. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you said, this item would be considered exempt under the relevant regulations. The substantive item was dealt with in closed session, and my advice would be that the minutes should also be.
Is everyone in agreement with that? I've had a move, I've had a second, everyone's in agreement. We'll now confirm that any press and public present will now be excluded from the meeting, and the meeting live stream recording will now